All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got 5 o'clock. If we could get the meeting room in order. I'm going to call our work session of the Enterprise City Council to order. Let the record show that all members of the council are present. Council, you should have an agenda in the smaller of the 3 folders on your desk there. Short agenda tonight, but we do have a long regular meeting agenda to review, so we probably will fill most of our hour discussing that. Jonathan, if you could get us started with our Q1 goals.
Hey, Mayor, council members, you gave us kind of an aggressive list on Q1, so that was just at the last meeting that we kind of formally, I think, sent those out after our strategic planning meeting on the 18th. So we have not gotten very far on the Q1 goals, but just some quick updates on Phase 4 street resurfacing. The paving portion of that is complete. There's still some punch list items and other things that need to be closed out, but all streets have been paved at this point. So the purchases of budgeted equipment for PV Sports Field Complex Phase 2, Barry Mott's got those in working through the bid packets to get those to you over the next couple of council meetings. Our sidewalk projects, I spoke with Barry today. We are complete with what we set out to do, and we're $90,000 under budget on our sidewalk projects. So talking to the mayor a little bit about, what our goals are with that funding, I told Barry not to close out the contract yet and to go back and come up with a plan, if we have other sidewalks that still need to be repaired, to come back with some recommendations on how, where to go next in that list. So typically in the past where we have looked at the sidewalks, the goal has been to connect good sidewalks, so repair bad sidewalks that tie into good sidewalks so that you have a continuous, good sidewalk at some point. And if we keep backing out, in this case, we looked at the Main Street corridor as good sidewalk that was in good repair. And then where do we have sidewalks that tie into the Main Street corridor that are bad or maybe non-existent, and then, get those up to standard. So I think that's the blanket that we're going to look at, or the lens we're going to look at for this other 90,000 or so, and see how much that is. And I haven't done all the math. Barry probably knows how much it is per linear foot for concrete, and the width of the sidewalk and all those things matter. But we'll bring you back a recommendation on that, assuming that you all agree that we should take that 90,000 and apply it towards other sidewalks that are deficient.
I certainly agree with that. We have some of our older neighborhoods that still have repairs that need to be done, and I'm very pleased with what we have done so far.
Yes, sir. But if you do go down Edwards and Lee Street, those are the 2 that we contemplated and finished in this project. And again, we had about $250,000 budgeted in that, and we're able to do it for $90,000 less than the budget. So good job for Barry and his team. The TAP sidewalk grant, Barry, I haven't talked to you about where we're at on that project as it exists now, but the current TAP project, if you remember, extended down Daleville Avenue, basically to the bypass or just short of it, and then ran in to the existing sidewalk on Daleville Avenue. That project, the last I talked to Barry, was still with AlDOT for final review, and then that process would go out to bid, and then we would pull that up. But what you had asked us to do in Q1 is to identify the next phase. So once that project lets, we are eligible to apply for a future TAP grant. If you recall, that TAP program is about an 80-20 match through AlDOT. So we provide the 20% match and get 80% funding. Based on our conversations, our recommendation at this point would be to tie in from George Wallace Drive, where we've done the renovations on what we're calling PV Park Phase 2, but the multi-purpose fields there, and run a sidewalk down Bellwood Avenue towards the bypass. We believe that'll help out with ADA compliance, and should we finish out Phase 2 of the park, it would tie in nicely about the same time frame in 25, 26 to finish up that sidewalk about the same time that we reopen PV Park with the multi-purpose fields that we're planning to put out there.
And there are already sidewalks going down Geneva Highway there, right?
Some, in certain areas, yes, there are.
So would the idea be to eventually get all the way to Geneva Highway, from Geneva Highway to the circle on Bellwood Road?
Yes. So that portion of Geneva Highway from Main Street in front of City Hall does have sidewalks that tie into it. So you would be able to go downtown from there as well.
So all the way from downtown out to the circle, past
sir.
PV Park?
Yes, ma'am.
I spoke with Mr. Ramson today. Actually, I called him because I just wanted an update on the sidewalk project on Delbert Avenue. It's been since 2021 when we were awarded that. So I basically was like, what's the deal there? And he says that there's nothing necessarily wrong. You know, it's just a waiting game. That they hope that it can go out for bid in a month and a half or so.
Okay.
Hoping to begin construction in spring. I just said, okay. But I just want to update the rest as to, that was some of my conversation.
Yeah, it sure does seem our internal sidewalk projects go a lot faster than our
Yeah.
TAP sidewalk
I made that a
projects.
point to mention that I was not happy with. It's 2024 and
They do.
Nothing.
I think that's been about 2 years now that we've been working on that particular project. So that's assuming you want us to proceed with another TAP. So the Parks and Rec maintenance facility, if you recalled, we stripped that out of the original bid for the Recreation and Aquatics Center. We have come in under budget on that project and believe that we still have funding within the project or the original budget for the project to build that facility. Initially, we had talked about building that on site where the park, where the new Recreation and Aquatic Center would be. However, based on what we believe will be a high demand for parking during certain kind of peak seasons, so in essence, when baseball season and basketball or volleyball kind of collide, those kind of areas, and when we have large tournaments, those will be pressure points for the parking situation down there. So we have opted to look at other locations that will meet the Parks and Rec Department needs. They service more than just that area out of this facility. So this facility would be designed to service places like Donaldson Park and Johnny Henderson Park. And so Billy is currently looking right now at locations, and we'll come back to you with a recommendation on where we'd like to put that. So the Industrial Development Board did have someone looking at around 80 acres of property in the Dozier Industrial Park. To my knowledge, that's still set to close sometime on or about the middle of March. Again, we've been fortunate that property has been developed with a veterans home and then has potential to do other good things. If you recall, that developer is looking to do the same thing we were talking about doing with speculative building space or additional building space within the industrial sector. And so I think that aligns with the city's vision of what that property would be used for, and also allows the city not to have to take the risk to borrow money to make that investment. The planning and zoning. Zoning is really what's going to come before the council, the new zoning ordinance. That advertisement is set to be introduced on the 20th of February, Beverly, is that right, to the council? And then sometime on or about March 19th, have the public hearing. So we're excited. We finally were able to get that straightened out with the newspaper. And then our council options for connectivity of 2 routes that you looked during our long-range transportation plan, comprehensive plan, you identified 2 routes. We've been working with SANE, and we're at the point now where we need to, if we want to go forward, we're going to have to fund that. So I'll bring you a proposal on the funding side of that was not anticipated in this year's budget. But I think it was roughly around $50,000 or so. But I have that on my desk. I just haven't gotten it to the point that I can give you a presentation on it yet. The benchmarks for crime reports, police department, I talked to Chief Moore today. He's working on that. And there's another here on update the council on kind of a lot of data where we're at on different departments and projects. The mayor has asked us to do a citywide kind of year-end review. We won't call it a state of the city, but a year-end review at the next council meeting. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about today was potentially shifting the start of the next council meeting by an hour to the left, and how that gets structured, whether you do the year-end review at 4 o'clock or you do it at 6 o'clock. I don't think it matters to the mayor, but the point is that he would like some time to have staff kind of brief the council and the public about what's gone on in 2023 in our community.
Yeah, Mayor and I were just talking about that prior to the meeting. We had discussed him doing that at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And then I think you, me, and Beverly probably need to talk offline tomorrow about what that looks like for the council meeting. So I think the biggest thing is she just needs to get a good notice out, right, of when our work session is going to be, when our meeting is going to be. First thing we need to do is kind of estimate how long our meeting's going to be so we can kind of back into when those need to start.
Okay.
But I think the three of us can handle that.
We anticipate getting you over the next couple of council meetings. Don't have that recommendation, but at some point we anticipate that the ADVA will ask for the city to take over the street that has been cut from 167 to 51. That street will need a name. Again, we've discussed this and something along the lines of Veterans Parkway or Veterans Boulevard or something that would not specifically single out a particular veteran or branch of service, but kind of cover everybody, is along the lines of what was being discussed. Again, the lighting project on the Southern Bypass, as you well know, we have funded that. Alabama Power has designed it 3 times now. That is still with the Alabama Department of Transportation. We are just waiting on their final approval of the design, and then Alabama Power will proceed with installation of those lights. That'll go from 167 South, roughly at the community college at that intersection, to 27 South by the Good to Go. Barry and Thomas know that sometime this quarter they're going to be briefing you on Operation Clean Sweep, about what we've done. I know it's been probably a year and a half or so since we started that. They're also going to start this quarter giving you an update on nuisance properties. And so we'll have quarterly briefs so that you can kind of get a better appreciation than what you might hear at some council meetings where it's, 364 complaints for nuisance properties, 65 mitigated. We think that you and the public may want to do a deeper dive on that, about, what we're actually doing and what types of properties and what the roadblocks are that we're running into. Because it is a balance. And I try to do that with the public when they call, and just let them understand that, on one hand, we have these personal property rights that everybody, really appreciate, and we can't just go over to somebody's house because they haven't mowed their grass or done, aren't taking care of it the way that they want them to, and, force some sort of action on them. There is some due process and legal maneuvering that has to be done. And so we want to make sure that we give you a good update on what our challenges are when we're dealing with those.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, sir. Councilman Pageant and I still need to work together to schedule a meeting with Munis about the operating system, and find out, what's realistic and an implementation plan for some of the things that he would like. I do think that I'll skip down to hire a new HR director on here, because that kind of directly ties into that. So that we mark that one complete. February 5th was Deborah's first day, and she's here with us. Would you like to come up and introduce yourself to the council? Put you on the spot. So this is her second day at work. She's already had a staff meeting, and she hasn't quit. Showed up for work on the second day. So
Good evening. He did put me on the spot, but I'm happy to be here. I bring 25 years of HR experience with me. This is my first time in the city side of things. I've been working in the private sector, but no stranger to HR and what is needed in the basics. So I've already identified some things, and so it's great. Jonathan, and again, has done a great job of already assessing what's needed. So they gave me a good start. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, welcome aboard. Look forward to getting to know you.
we're very excited to have an HR director. I can tell you, no one more so than Leanne. And we think that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that we can implement that tie in directly to what Councilman Pageant wanted us to do with automation of certain processes. We have found that some of our systems within Munis that we're just not utilizing it. We have the capabilities, but it requires some legwork, and that's going to tie in, I think, directly to what he was talking about how do we get those pinch points and get somebody in here with us on the ground to help train while we're still doing the work that we need to do and build the backbone of the systems that we need to do. And that's really what we've struggled with. So I appreciate his willingness to sit down and use his expertise in the IT industry to kind of help us formulate a plan. I'm still working with Enterprise State on a date to come in and give an update on their Workforce Development Center, as well as the attorney that we've been working with on the Land Bank Authority. You know, we approved that, but we still have several steps to go before we actually formalize the Enterprise Land Bank Authority. And so I want to make sure that you guys on the council have an opportunity to understand what the path ahead is. Our wayfinding signage presentation, Billy, Mariah, Tammy have been working on that. Over the next 3 meetings, we're going to find a time to have them come in and update you and give a recommendation on how to implement that wayfinding signage plan. So something that we talked about in the strategic plan, the downtown lighting updates. Several, I guess maybe a year ago now, Councilman Goolsby had approached the council about it being too dark in the downtown area. So we were able to get Alabama Power to come in and do a lighting assessment, and I think I sent you all the results of that. The lighting is dim in certain areas, and I think that there may be a solution ahead. We're working right now with Alabama Power to look at about 131 lights in the downtown area to see, you know, what it would take to upgrade those, what the financial burden would be on the city, and what options we have to do that. But I think there is the good news is I think we can make some improvements with relatively low cost. But again, this is should be a shorter window and an easier path than we had on the Southern Bypass. But we do think that there's some efficiencies to be gained there, and it should make the downtown area a lot brighter. Highway 27 Shellfield Road improvements. Again, something that's taken a long time that we've worked with ALDOT. If you recall, the council put in for an A-Trip 2 grant. We're awarded the grant. They asked us to design a roundabout. We paid for the design on the roundabout. The roundabout became too expensive. They asked us to go back and re-engineer a different solution. It sounds like that solution, and Barry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but is a traffic signal, is what they have. So that solution should go to bid sometime right now. What I'm understanding is in March. So
it's already been designed?
It has been designed. So the little project management sheet that I saw, yeah, you have a better update? Okay.
Apologize. Just on the bid date, I did talk to the consultant right before we walked into the door. He said it is slated for June of this year to go to bid. That's what's on ALDOT's calendar for this project. That's subject to change, but currently it's June of this year. Yes, sir.
Yeah. The last project update we got on that was March, so I'm glad Barry called today. We also have a brief, one of the proposals we talked about in the strategic planning meeting that Chief Davis from the fire department has asked us to look at is EMS pay for our first responders. And so we should have a brief over the next couple meetings for you on that. Chief Davis is on leave right now, or else we may have tried to get that in this meeting, but just to tell you what some other communities are doing and then see if there's a way that we might want to implement a similar incentive pay or bonus pay for for maintaining their EMS certification. Talked about the nuisance properties, and then another one that Chief Davis can brief at the next meeting, but may be on tonight's agenda. But the Safe Haven baby boxes, we have found a company that's willing to help sponsor that. And with that, there would be no financial cost to the city, but there would be a lease arrangement with the company. So we think that that's something we could install. I think Chief Davis wanted to do that at Central Fire. We believe that we've got a team with a general contractor, alarm company, other folks that are part of that requirement to do the installation for us at little to no cost. And so that's something that, at some point we would like the council to consider authorizing the mayor to execute that agreement.
Yeah, that's on our agenda tonight, I
Yeah.
believe.
And I think, Ashley, I don't know, our city attorney had an opportunity to review that contract. So, Ashley, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Why don't y'all go ahead and turn to your agenda. Now that we're talking about it, we can go ahead and mark this. I think it's the last item.
So good evening. The company that they're talking about, from my understanding, is the only company in the nation that holds a patent in order to do one of these Safe Haven baby boxes. It's also the same company that we're doing the lease with, is the same company that's being used throughout the state. So it's the one that just did the Madison, Alabama one. It's the one that's done the Dothan. It's looking into doing Ozark as well. So it's the same company that throughout Alabama is being used. And it's really the only option right now because of the patent.
Yes, so it's on the next to last page. Does everybody see that on the agenda? Safe Haven Baby Box says the city will be provided a grant of up to $18,000 from Kids to Love for the purchase and installation of a Safe Haven Baby Box at Central Fire Station. In June of 2023, Safe Haven laws in the state of Alabama were changed from mothers being allowed to drop off infants less than 72 hours old at hospitals and newborns up to 45 days old at either hospitals or fire stations. So, Jonathan, you think this $18,000 is going to cover the vast majority of the expense? Is that what we're hearing?
I do. I think it will, and I think the team that we've talked to anyway. I think the contractor's willing to do it at no charge. Of course, we may provide some of the labor, but we have to have that contractor, state certified general contractor, to oversee the project and make sure that we're doing things in compliance with code. So,
Scotty, did you have anything to add?
No, I'm just saying, Chief Davis and I talked. He's up at a conference right now, but he's in touch with a lady that I gave him the name to, and for this funding, and everything should come right out of there. It's the same people, like our attorney said, that has a contract all over the state, all over the United States too. And they just recently put one up in Prattville too, at my grandson's fire stations. But that should be the cost and everything. But I'll give you more information once Chief comes back and we see where we're at in it. But
so what Chief Davis and I specifically discussed on the funding is that we're going to try to do it as inexpensively as possible and still accomplish it. So if we get donations from the general contractor or materials or whatever that it will take to accomplish that, the goal is to take $18,000, which should cover it anyway, and reduce that to whatever, if it's $15,000 or $11,000. that allows that money to go back to the company that's providing these grants to
To use
install them,
somewhere
and they can use it at another community. So I think, 18,000 would cover it, but we're hoping that we can continue to find partners that can, do this for.
And if we do
little
cut
no
it back,
expense.
that does help, like Jonathan says, other states, because this grant is for X amount of boxes that they're going to fund. So that will help some other city out if we do that. So that's
Does anybody have any concerns about moving forward with this tonight? Greg, you good? All right. Okay. Jonathan, was that all you had from the Q1 goals?
Yes, sir.
All right, so council will move away from our work session packet to our agenda tonight. Let's review the agenda. We've got a long agenda. So let's go ahead and run through that. So, as you can see there, roll call, opening prayer and pledge of allegiance, and we'll approve the agenda. The consent agenda consists of all the regular items of work session minutes from January 16, council minutes from January 16, then accounts payable A and B that were sent out to us on Friday. Then we've got contract billings from Wiregrass Construction Company for resurfacing of Phase 4. Beasley Construction for new pickleball courts, multipurpose complex, our new corporate hangar out at the airport, and then some invoices from Poly Incorporated for those same projects, and from CDG for those same projects. And we've got Southern Earth Sciences for the CDBG demo project Phase 7, and travel requests from engineering and sewer. Any questions on any of our consent agenda items? Staff, anything we need to know that we don't already know, hadn't already discussed? Okay. Then the mayor's going to recognize our wrestling teams, and we're going to give the oath of office to Ashley for city attorney. Then we'll have privilege of the floor and any additional staff reports. Then we'll move into our public hearings. We've got 5 separate rezones, but they're all contiguous properties. That's the Connor rezone 2, then the Clark, the Moats, and the Connor and Moats combined. So, Jonathan, did we want to discuss that in work session? Or at least tell us what to expect?
Sure. So if you want, I can kind of give an overview of kind of a timeline and.
Yeah,
What's
let's
going
do that, and we've got time. Let's do that, and then that'll allow us to go ahead and get acquainted with before the hearing tonight.
Can you all see the,
Yeah, it's on our screens.
okay, so, a little bit of background about this, I guess, zoning change here that was requested. Back in June of 2023, the Wiregrass Economic Development Corporation had approached the city about a project called Project Panama at the time that needed 100 or more acres of land, access to a 4-lane highway and rail access. And so at that time, the Enterprise Industrial Development Board trying to identify suitable sites in or around the Enterprise area for such a project because they didn't own any. Further down the line, in November of 23, the mayor, council members, members of the Planning Commission, members of the Industrial Development Board took a field trip to an OSB plant in Georgia. This was because the project was identified as something to do with the wood manufacturing business, and they wanted to kind of look and feel and see and hear, what a project like that might entail. Many of them across the entities had expressed concerns that they collectively had centered around noise, odor, and traffic were the three main issues. So, having identified a suitable site, the ID board began to work to see if that site was attainable, to purchase it. And so it was privately held, so those individuals would need to rezone their property. And so I think it's 296 acres roughly in total across the 5 rezone applications. But this is kind of the timeline about what brought us here tonight. So, the application back in November was submitted for rezone to the Planning Commission. Signage, advertisement, all those things that were legally required were done. Certified letters went out to all the adjacent property owners, and the paper advertised the proposal not once but twice. We're only required by law to do one publication. In December, the Planning Commission met, December 18th specifically, and heard public comments and voted unanimously to recommend a rezone of the property to the Enterprise City Council. The engineering department sent a letter to the council informing them of that decision or recommendation. And then in January 2nd of this year, City Council did the first reading to set a public hearing date on February 6th. So that was laid over at the last council meeting on the 16th of January, and then tonight it's before you to consider a rezone. Even if the council approves the rezone tonight, the developer would still have to bring development plans to the city engineering office for plan review and approval, just like any other, whether it's a subdivision or commercial development. So in terms of noise and odor, during the site visit, all of the members there were over 20 people that went on a bus to this plant. And they were encouraged to use all 5 senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? And collectively, the group came away with the opinion that many of their concerns were either mitigated or overstated. They had a fear of what they thought this kind of plant might look like, but they weren't, particularly dissuaded from the benefits that it would provide. The processes had very little noise. No one noticed anything from the parking lot or even the road when we came in. And I think several of them commented that they parked, some of them drove separately, and parked outside on the road to just kind of hear and look and see the traffic. The smells in the plant, obviously, were more than they were on the exterior of the plant. But there's a debarking area where trees are brought in and unloaded. And that area had kind of, what I describe as, what you might smell when you go buy some lumber at Home Depot or Lowe's. I mean, maybe not pine, but you smell, it just smelled like wood, right? So it wasn't what I would think about like a paper mill or something. I think that was a big concern for a lot of people when they went into that visit, was they were thinking, all the times that they've driven down, I-65 or some other interstate and past a paper mill, you have that distinct smell that's there, and that was not present. In terms of health, water, air quality, those kind of things, specifically, before they'd be allowed to, break ground or do a project, I already told you they have to go through the engineering department and go through all the city zoning and codes and things like that. But the Environmental Management Agency for the state of Alabama, ADEM, requires an air permit, which is really based on EPA guidance, federal guidance for the Environmental Protection Agency. So specifically, there's 3 OSB plants in the state of Alabama, and they would be required and are required to maintain annual maintenance and reports through the Environmental Management Agency. So there's 2 semi-annual inspections that I'm speaking to ADEM, and 1 annual inspection that they're required to do. There's several businesses that have to meet similar standards, not all with air permits, but there's a lot of different ADEM permits that you're required to file depending on your industry. Some of those like HSAA, Sessions Peanut, Arista Aviation, who has a paint booth, et cetera. There's plenty of industry in Enterprise and in the Wiregrass that deal with ADEM on various levels. OSB plant would not have a significant amount of effluent or discharge, and the water would be primarily to keep wood wet outside and for fire suppression. They're not big users of the sewer system, right? They're not dumping toxic chemicals into our sewer system. So in dealing with that, I wanted to point out 2 things. So got kind of a brief on what it would be required for a company like this to come in and go to ADEM. There are a lot of acronyms that, frankly, I'm not going to try to act like I'm an expert on, because I'm not. But the bottom line is that there's 2 bullets in here that I found particularly reassuring. If a company, whatever company, wants an air permit, there's a 30-day window with ADEM that they have to submit a review and have a public hearing and public notice that, what their project might be, what kind of discharge they're anticipating, if any. And so they get a 30-day window there. The federal EPA has a 45-day window. So that's all tied into their permitting process. Again, no odor expected from a plant of that type. Wastewater will not be stored on ponds on site, so you don't have to worry about land contamination there. No on-site landfill waste, and a lot of the waste for these wood companies are typically reused or used in their process so that nothing goes to waste. Traffic was another one of those concerns that was discussed. For a potential OSB mill or other industry, 150 trucks a day is what some of these places have, somewhere between 100 and 150. The proximity of this particular site on US 84 makes it ideal to handle truck traffic. And I'll talk a little bit about that on my next slide. But I want to point out that wherever a plant like this, so in the wood industry, like there's a plant that's not an OSB plant, but it's in the wood industry in Troy right now. There are a lot of trucks that come through Enterprise already to get to that plant. So, we have a wood basket in this general area that is a demand, nationally, and we have what they need. We have the product that they need. And so they are looking in these general areas to find places to manufacture their product. Wherever, if they would go to Defuniak Springs or whatever's in their 50, 60-mile radius, truck traffic's going to come to and from wherever the point of origin, wherever the timber is, to get to the plant wherever it's located. So if you look on that top picture, people in the audience may not be able to see that very well, but it says 10,471 vehicles in 2022 were estimated by ALDOT's traffic count on a daily basis. So that road is the same buildup and makeup, US 84 going west towards Elba, same buildup as it is east going towards Dothan. there's almost double the amount of cars, or a little over double the amount of cars there at right under 22,000 per day. So when you talk about capacity, that road certainly has capacity. In other built-up areas along the bypass in Enterprise, those traffic volumes reach well over 30,000 cars a day. In certain areas, on a similar construct of a road on US 231, like in Dothan, those reach well over 40,000 cars a day. So our current ordinance prohibits truck traffic onto city streets. As I understand it, the ID board, if they were to buy this property, would not allow truck access off of Moats Road into the site. So I think their vision for that 296 acres is some sort of an industrial park. And so, similar to Yancey Parker or the Dozier Park that is under construction now, or the North Industrial Park or the South Industrial Park. And their intent would be to work with any companies that would be a tenant or locate into that park to utilize the bypass and state routes that they need to be on and enforce our truck ordinance. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the benefits of, land acquisition and industrial projects. So, in this hypothetical or, whatever we're exercise that we're doing with OSB or wood products, right? That was a real project. So I pulled the manufacturing data off the Alabama Department of Labor's website, and I looked at Coffee County. If you look in there, Coffee County, again, hard to read, but it's $18.30. That's our average wage in Coffee County. Many of the counties around us, like Dale County, for instance, is significantly higher at $27.50 an hour, and that can largely be attributed to Fort Novosel. The jobs that they have there are certainly, in aggregate, higher paying jobs than the rest of the area. So with that, if you look at a stated goal being to diversify off the industrial base, which is largely dominated by Fort Novosel, and then to find higher wage jobs to bring into the area so that, kids, grandkids, people have a place to come back to and want to be able to work and provide and have a meaningful life. Manufacturing in the wood product industry, the average wage is $24.35, which is 33% higher than the county average. So it's a significant increase in terms of the type of jobs and what those people would be paid. As I mentioned before, one of the shortcomings for the city and the ID board identified were they didn't have much industrial property to offer, certainly not in 50-plus acre tracts, which are a lot of industry in today's environment. They're not looking for a 5 or a 10 acre site. If they want to build something, they're building in scale and trying to build something to maximize efficiencies, and are typically looking at 50 to 100 plus acre sites for real true economic development projects. And another shortcoming is that we have no rail serve sites. Over the past few decades, rail service in Coffee County has dried up. One rail customer left on the short line here in Coffee County, and that's Sessions Peanuts. So, the fewer rail customers you have, the more expensive it is to operate the rail. All those costs get passed along to, if there's 5 customers and down to 2 and then down to 1, somebody's got to pay just what it costs to have rail. And so, and then once it's discontinued, it's almost impossible to get back. And you can look to our neighbors to the south in Geneva County or to the northwest in Elba. This rail that's in Enterprise used to run to Elba. Once it's pulled up, it's something like $1 million or more dollars. At least several years ago, it was at $1 million a mile to put down rail. With inflation, I can't guess at what that is right now, but it is cost prohibitive to get that back. 6 years ago, Enterprise lost the feed mill right behind City Hall. That was Wayne Farms. There's one in Defuniak Springs, one in Enterprise. and one in Troy. And those were consolidated on the CSX rail line in or around Newton. And so, again, rail is crucial and essential to a diverse industrial base. Its absence limits the nature of businesses willing to locate to our community. And so, as you look at enterprise in aggregate along the rail, and if you ascribe to the belief that rail-served industrial sites are important, if not this parcel of property, what parcel of property would be prudent to do this? And so I've highlighted in yellow there kind of where our rail system runs through the city limits of Enterprise. And you'll notice that a large swath of it is through the downtown corridor. Outside of that, there's a stretch that runs along Coppinville Road, and then to the north and to the west, it runs along US 84 towards Elba. If you'll notice along that stretch, you can kind of see Sessions Peanuts ties into it, kind of right across the street from our high school. And then to the north of that, Utility Trailer, and then the UPS manufacturing, what was Duracast in the North Industrial Park. And to the north of that, down 51, is the Yancey Parker Industrial Parks Phase 1 and 2. That rail used to run through that industrial park. So, and then kind of off to the north there, you also notice Shell Field. And a lot of people don't consider that, that's just part of Fort Novacell, and we're proud to have it here in our community. But it's an industry. Make no mistake about it. 50 to 60 helicopters that are out there, roughly, launching every day. It produces a lot of noise. There's a lot of other things that we all love about that, and we've gotten used to. But if somebody came in to Enterprise from the outside and just did an assessment on where our industry is, that would be one of the sites that they showed us as, we have industry there. So that's kind of how we got here and kind of what I know about the project, Council. I'll leave it to you for any questions.
And your plan is to give that same presentation during the hearing this evening, right?
If you would like.
I think it would be helpful. What do y'all think?
I agree.
Do y'all have any specific questions? I know all of us have been drilled and skilled on this for a long time. So do y'all have any questions of Jonathan? I think he needs to add anything to bring some clarity. Okay. All right. So that will obviously cover the 5 public hearings. Any other? Of course, we'll have we'll have to have a public hearing for each item. Like I typically do when we expect speakers, I'll read the public hearing agenda, let everybody know what the ground rules are, how that's going to go, just to try to keep that orderly. I'll do that for the first one, and then just remind everybody that the same things apply for all of them. So the next item after the rezones would be the CDBG demolition project. Barry, why don't you give us an update on that? Looks like we've exceeded our grant funding.
Yes, sir. So this is the third CDBG grant that we received for demo properties, especially for blight and nuisance properties that are here in the city limits. The first two were $250,000. This one was $292,700. So just under $300,000 that we were given as a grant to remove structures and properties. We're sitting currently at $16,490 left in the grant. And we were trying to maximize that number, expend every dollar that we could there. David put together a bid package, and I'm not going to bore you with the details, but basically a way to add projects to it. We have 4 options. The first option is we can award the structure at Plaza, and that exceeds the bid amount we have by $2,440.
Would you explain what that structure is, please?
Yes, sir. I don't have the picture here in front of me, but I know it's a larger structure off the road. It's a home that was abandoned or burnt. It's uninhabited now. I don't know, Thomas, are you here?
He's here somewhere. Oh, there he is.
Can you give the location again, Mr. Mott?
Yes, ma'am, I've got the address, but I don't, it's the one on Plaza.
Plaza.
It's 3841 Plaza Drive. And that structure is uninhabited, is off the road. And I wish I'd brought the pictures here, and I could probably pull them up if you want to see them on my laptop to show you what these structures look like in the application. Do you remember what those three structures were like? The ones that are here, Plaza, Sims, and Alberta?
So Justin Tolbert, he's our senior building inspector. He handles the demo grant, and he's the one that's normally on site with these properties. So he'd be able to give you more. He'd be able to give you more detail. But I do know the one that's 3841 Plaza Drive. That is a multi-structure property. That's I think it has I was going to say 4 or 5. I believe it has 5 structures on the property. That's the reason why that number is around 8,000 or 18,000, and the other one's 3. The 117 Sims Street is a dilapidated manufactured home, and then the 900 Alberta Street is a 2-story, probably 3,000 square foot home that had burnt, and it's still there today, and we were trying to get that down and out of that neighborhood.
Right, the home on Alberta Street is in a nice neighborhood. The owners had insurance on it. Isn't this money supposed to be used to get rid of dilapidated property in neighborhoods that are, I can't understand spending the taxpayers' money to take a house down on Alberta Street that was a $250,000, $300,000 home when the homeowner had insurance on it.
Yes, sir. So we asked for, we're trying to get participation for the end of this grant, since we had a finite amount of money to try to get these properties down. And so these were some of the properties that were brought to us to tear down. This property in particular, they brought it to us. They asked if it would be eligible for the demo grant. So we ran it through the process. The state found it to be eligible for the demo grant. The details behind it, of like why they weren't able to tear it down themselves through insurance, I'm not 100% familiar with, but it did qualify for the demo grant. And they did put an application in, and that's the reason why it's before you today.
Well, I totally disagree with that property, because that's not the purpose of this money, spending taxpayers' money for that.
But I'm just wanting for clarity, isn't the purpose of it though, we are asking people to call. I'm not advocating for or against this property, but I'm saying we need to be consistent before we start picking out properties, say, I don't think we've ever questioned that before. That's what I'm asking. I'm thinking we ask people to, if you're interested, to call, right?
We do
and
two
then we
things.
run the
One,
process.
Yes, ma'am. We do 2 things. One, if someone comes to us with a property that's in a neighborhood that's, the house it has to be uninhabited, and it needs to be a blight or a nuisance property. Regardless of the situation, whether it's they had insurance money or not, they can submit the name in of the property. We go and verify that it meets the criteria. We submit those names into the state. They look at those and make sure that they are eligible to receive the grant money to do that. And this is it's a 90% grant, 10% match to do. It is to remove homes. The intent of this is to remove dwelling structures that are dilapidated for whatever reason, and to get those down so that they're not an attractant for animals, critters, homeless, children, whatever, in a neighborhood. So we go through anybody that submits a property to us, we look at those in the order in which we get them, and then we go through the process. And this one met all the criteria for the grant, and we bid those in an order that the way it was done was Plaza. We can award none. Like, we can reject all the bids, and we can turn that money back in, $16,000. We can turn that back into a DECA. We don't have time to bid another project, so it's either do nothing, reject all the bids. Number 2 would be to accept Plaza as it is. Third option would be to accept Plaza and Sims, and the third one would be to accept all 3 properties, which is Plaza, Sims, and Alberta. The The lowest, let me take you through the three options real quick. If you were,
Barry,
Sir.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but for the sake of time, I think we're going to just have to address this during the regular meeting.
yes, sir.
We're up against, we've got about 5 minutes.
Yes, sir.
So what we'll do is we will, when we get to this agenda item, we'll just call you and Thomas back up and we'll start back with this. But it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get through this discussion
Yes, sir.
before the meeting. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So, and that goes for every other item on the agenda. After this, we're just going to have to do it the old-fashioned way of discussing them as we get to them. So let's take a quick 5-minute recess and be back here at 6 o'clock. So we're adjourned from our work session. We will reconvene at 6 o'clock in our regular council meeting.
Yes.
Would you like this microphone, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, they want me to do it prior to, so I need to come down there and do it. Or can I, all right, I can. Oh, okay, yeah. So it's on. Yeah, okay, just hold it up. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I got you. Okay, thank you.
by 1,000 years, I mean, this is my first time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got 6 o'clock, so if we could get the meeting room called to order here. Everybody can take their seats.
Oh, Lord.
All right, I'm going to call this meeting of the Enterprise City Council to order. Let the record show that all members of the council are present. If you would please stand with me for the opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. We've got Mayor Cooper going to give the opening prayer, and then I will lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
May we pray. Most gracious and heavenly Father, we want to thank Thee for this day and the many blessings that Thou hast bestowed upon us. As we gather together tonight, dear Lord, in the business of our city, let everything be decent and in order as we work to try to provide the best for our citizens. Give us strength, knowledge, and understanding. And most of all, dear Lord, let us learn how to love and treat one another with decency and respect. As we go along with this meeting tonight, dear Lord, as we leave here, let it be better than what it was when we came here. These and other blessings we ask in our Son, in Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen.
Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. All right, Council, you should have the agenda in front of you that we've been discussing in our prior work session. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda of the meeting as submitted.
I move to approve the agenda of the meeting as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider the consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the council for review, are considered to be routine, and will be enacted by one motion of the City Council with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda by request of a member of the City Council. I now call for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Beverly, let the record show I'll be abstaining due to a conflict with accounts payable B. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'll now call upon Mayor Cooper, who will present certificates to the members and coaches of the EHS boys and girls wrestling teams.
Again, we would like to say good evening to everyone, and anything that happens in Enterprise is always progress and number one. So tonight, we are honoring our wrestling team from Enterprise High School. I'm going to ask you to come up, and we do have some certificates that we're going to award you with. And the coaches. Just to kind of all spread around. Come on around this way, some too. Some of y'all come on this side over here. Hey, you ready? Okay. All right, Scotty. Okay. You go.
This is a certificate of achievement presented to Evelyn Holmes Smith for earning your 4th state wrestling championship in the 120-pound weight class. Next one is for Tamani Benamarito for earning your 1st state wrestling championship in the 126 weight class. Mackenzie Schultz for earning your 2nd state wrestling championship in the 152-pound weight class. And Mallory Ladd for earning your 1st state wrestling championship in the 185 weight class.
Again, we want to thank these young ladies for a job we are doing. Let's have another round of applause for these children. And next we'll have the young men. This next one is a certificate for the young men, and they are not here tonight, but we're going to read them out anyway.
the Enterprise Boys Wrestling Team for earning state runners-up in the state dual championship. It's quite an honor.
You might want to give it to the coach.
Is that all of the wrestling?
Yes.
All right, next item on the agenda, I'm going to call upon Mayor Cooper, who will administer the oath of office to City Attorney Ashley Marshall. Come on, boys, you two.
Okay. All right. Ashley, we're going to ask you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Ashley Marshall,
I, Ashley Marshall,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of Alabama,
of the State of Alabama,
so long as I continue
so long as I continue
a citizen thereof,
as a citizen thereof,
and I will faithfully,
and I will faithfully,
honestly
honestly
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office
of the office
upon which I am about
upon the office of which I'm about
to enter
to enter
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. All right. We'll take a picture. Come on.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations, Ms. Marshall. We'll now move to the agenda item called Privilege of the Floor. This allows persons that are in attendance here tonight and members of the public that wish to address the council on any matters. They will be afforded 3 minutes to address the council. I would like to point out that if you're here to speak on any of the rezone issues, of which we have several of tonight, there will be a public hearing for those, so please hold your comments until we open those public hearings. So if you're here to speak about anything other than the rezones, now would be the time to come forward. Does anybody here wish to take privilege of the floor? All right, I see no one. We'll move on to staff reports. I know we got cut short in our work session, so are there any other staff members that wish to address the council this evening? Come on, Barry.
Thank you, Council. Mayor, as we've done in the past, the first council meeting of the month, I try to give you a quick update of where we are on our capital projects and other things that are going along with engineering and public works. And Jonathan went through several of these, and I know we have a long agenda ahead of us, so I will make this as brief as possible. Some of this he already covered, so I'll just skip through those. Capital project update. As you know, PV Park Phase 1 is getting very close to being complete. The date still is of April of this year. So that project is close, nearly 85%, and is on schedule. PV Park Phase 2, Shannon at Public Works and I have been reviewing how we're going to tackle that project, and we're working on that. There's really no change for your update tonight, other than we're getting prepared to do that project in-house. The recreation facility, nearing 50% complete on that project. That's still on schedule, actually ahead of schedule. Their projected date of completion is about October of this year. Pool's still in construction, and they're doing interior work on the structures that are there. That project is progressing very well. City Hall renovations. I did a tour this morning with the contractor. We're approximately 20% complete with the project. Currently, we're still on budget. They're expecting Phase 1 completion, which is to complete the area they're in now, sometime June, July And then we'll move over to Phase 2. So Phase 2, just to remind you, is the Water Department area and the old police area where the mayor's office currently is located. Currently, we're still under construction till October of this year. That is dependent on them getting some critical items, mainly electrical switchgear and HVAC. They are working extremely hard to get those pieces in place to get that project completed, but currently still on budget and on schedule. That is a current picture I put up there that I took this morning, so you can see downstairs in the basement. As y'all toured before, if you've been down there, they demoed everything, so they're going back with the metal stud walls, and they're working on that. So we're working on getting you an official tour downstairs in the next couple of weeks and letting you see it during construction. Paving project update, as Jonathan said, on Phase 4, all streets are paved, and we've got permanent markings and loops to be completed to close that out, so it's very close to being in punch list. The downtown sidewalk project, West Lee Street and Edwards are complete, and he's tasked me to come up with a plan for that remaining $90,000. We're still on track to have that completed per your request, to have that done by the end of the first quarter. The pickleball courts, we seal coated the parking lot up there, a joint effort between Rec Department and Public Works. The road has been connected over to Wallace Drive, over to that parking area. They striped it this morning. So as people drive down the road, it looks like it's nearly complete. I just want to encourage the public, don't use it yet. It's still the contractor's site till we get through. He's still waiting on one critical piece of electrical equipment to get that up, to get the lights and all working. And once he does, we'll do a full punch list, and then we'll take acceptance of the project. But I know that we've gotten a lot of excitement for people calling us saying, when can we use it? The goal right now, this was April, I believe, in our last slide show, so I've moved that up to March. Honestly, I think we could be through with this thing in the next 2 weeks. The Aldott 27 Sheffield Road, that's just an update. I got right before I walked in that is on Aldott's website for a June letting for that project. That's subject to change. The hangar project that's going on at the airport, they're pouring the slab and the foundations currently now. The rain did set them back over the weekend. We had a significant amount of rain, but they cleaned those out yesterday, and they're pouring grade beams and pedestals today. TAP grant, we recovered that, no change in that. It was projected in their last report to you that they would bid that project sometime first quarter of this year, 2024. So I'm expecting to hear something back from them in the next couple of weeks. Under Public Works, just give you a quick update on our garbage for the past month. We took 1,200 tons to the landfill. Currently, we're on household garbage, which is what's in the green cans. We're on schedule. Yard waste, which is what we take to the grinding site, which are limbs, clippings, that kind of stuff, we're on schedule. Bulk garbage, what we call bulk garbage, or we call county, that's what we pick up, refrigerators, couches, that kind of stuff. We are roughly running about 2 days behind right now due to a piece of equipment. We had a knuckle boom that went down on us for 2 days. We've got it back up and running, and we'll get caught back up on county on the bulk, which is a good sign. We do have 2 knuckle booms ordered, and we're waiting for those 2 pieces of equipment to show up, and that will definitely give us some resources to stay ahead of this. But as y'all know, the supply chain has been slow, and we're doing everything we can to get that equipment in. I added 2 slides here just so you know Public Works is doing a lot right now with stormwater and sewer. These are projects that were completed over the last 30 days in January. We had some stormwater pipes that were placed on Ridgeway, one on Tartan Pines, the pickleball courts that I went through with you earlier, and we replaced a pier replacement over close to Green Drive. Those are piers that failed, and that we went in and did a pier replacement for a crossing of a sewer line, aerial across a ditch. What we have in process, or what we're expecting to get done over the next couple of weeks, especially in February, we have another pier replacement project on Maverick Way that we're working on. We're working with the county for storm drains improvements on Stone Chase, and we also have another pipe failure on Tartan Way. This is 40 foot of 36-inch stormwater pipe, and we've got that material in hand, and we're just scheduling a time to get that replaced. So that's a quick rundown of what we have going on at Public Works. I didn't know if I had any questions, but I want to stay on schedule with y'all once a month to check in.
Any questions of Barry? Thank you, Barry. These are helpful.
Thank you, sir.
Any other staff reports? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to old business. First item of old business is a public hearing and consideration of ordinance 010224, which is the Connor Family LTD rezone. I will now call for a public hearing prior to consideration of ordinance 010224, providing for the rezone of 161.61 acres of land owned by Connor Family Partnership LTD from AGR1, that's Agricultural District, to M2 General Manufacturing District, located at the intersection of Highway 84 and Moats Road. So let me set some expectations for everyone of how these public hearings work. I'm going to give these instructions for the first one, and it'll be the same one, so I'm not going to repeat myself 5 times. But, we've now opened the public hearing. I'm going to explain our agenda now, and then I'm going to give some rules of decorum here at the end. So the public hearing is open. First, I'm going to call upon staff for any information they might have concerning the project. This should include any information about recommendations from other boards, such as the Planning Commission, and any staff recommendations. After that, we'll follow that up to allow any members of the general public to voice their support or opposition to the project, including any specific concerns they feel the council should take into consideration. And then we will allow the staff to address any of the concerns that were brought up by the general public that they feel were not adequately addressed in their opening comments. Then we'll close the public hearing for council consideration of the ordinance. So a few ground rules before we get going. So just if everybody could keep this in mind, that this is a public hearing during a regular council meeting of the Enterprise City Council. This council is here to conduct business in an orderly manner, and we expect the attendees to respect the proceedings. One person will speak at a time. Please give the person who is speaking the same courtesy you expect when it is your time to speak. Outbursts from the audience will not be tolerated. After you are recognized by me to speak, please come forward and speak directly into the microphone here at the podium. Please make sure all comments are directed at the council, as we will be the ones making the decision. Under no circumstances should comments be directed to anyone other than the council. Please attempt to refrain from repeating the same points that have previously been made so as to keep the proceedings as efficient as possible. After the hearing is closed and council deliberations begin, there will be no more comments from the audience. All right, so let's get going with staff comments. Jonathan, I think you've got the same presentation that we saw in the work session.
So, Mayor, council members, again, I know we talked about this in the work session, but one thing that I wanted to be clear about is that, when we talk about this project, this is the project that precipitated the Industrial Development Board looking for land, okay, that should be a rail serve site, potentially, or have the opportunity to be a rail serve site. I know that there is a lot of chatter about what this might be or could be, and I want to reiterate that the Industrial Development Board, the City of Enterprise, et cetera, there are no active project agreements or contracts that have been signed or anything for any particular plant. But because of the chatter, I specifically used some information from this project to try to address some of the information that was being put out. So again, with that in mind, in June of 23, our economic development group, Wiregrass EDC, brought the concept of a plant, a manufacturing plant in the wood industry that needed, roughly 100 or more acres of land. I think at that time it was maybe closer to 200. But they needed 4-lane road access and they needed rail. And so we didn't have that. And so the IDB began looking and said, hey, we really need a rail serve site. Let's start looking at potential opportunities that are out there. With that, once we learned what type of project that it was, like I said, the mayor, some of the council, not all of them, some Industrial Development Board members and some members of the Planning Commission took a trip to an OSB plant in Georgia to get a feel for what kind of industry this potential project could be and what it would look like. Of those members that went, a common concern for them was noise. Another one was odor, and the third was traffic. These are things that, and some of the group were naysayers. Some of them were positive and for it. But with that, that precipitated the ID board trying to acquire this property and working out an agreement with potential landowners that if X, Y, and Z happened, they would try to buy this property. So with that, first the property had to be able to be zoned accordingly for industrial use. So an application was submitted by the property owners in November of '23 to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission, prior to that, there was an advertisement not once but twice in the paper notifying the public of the intent to rezone. There was also signage posted in accordance with state law. Certified letters went out to all the adjacent property owners. And then the Planning Commission met ultimately on the 18th of December and ultimately voted unanimously to recommend approval of the rezone to the City Council. So the engineering department then sent a letter to the City Council to notify them of their recommendation. On the 2nd of January, the council met and set a date for a public hearing, which is tonight. And the last council meeting, it was laid over in accordance with state law. And tonight, it is before you to consider a recommendation on rezone. If the council approves the rezone tonight, the developer, in this case being the Industrial Development Board of the City of Enterprise, would have to bring development plans through the city engineering office for site plan review and approval. All other state and federal statutes would have to be met for any project. So this is the same for, the land the ID board acquired that ultimately the Veterans Home came on, the Yancey Parker Industrial Park Phase 1 and 2, the North and South Industrial Parks. All these processes, they didn't know exactly what would go there. They had ideas about what went there. 90% or more of economic development projects never see the light of day. But they felt good about this project and wanted to pursue it. So with that, noise and odor. During the site visit, all members that attended from all three entities were encouraged to observe sights and sounds, smells, and really take in, if this was in the community, what impacts would it have? What are your concerns? And see if that's really going on or if this is, facts over feelings. And so the collective opinion of that group was that they didn't see, a lot of the odors or noise that they had anticipated seeing. Some remarked that it was, a remarkably clean plant. And so ultimately they decided, hey, we want to proceed. And the plant had, some smells inside the plant, some noises inside the plant. You had to wear hearing protection. But when you got outside of the plant, you didn't smell that. And it's certainly not like a paper mill or something like that. The smells weren't obnoxious. They were more like what you might smell in the lumber department at your local Home Depot or Lowe's. In terms of health, water, air, contaminants, things like that, any company, before they were able to break ground on a project in the state of Alabama, has to go through compliance measures with the Alabama Department of Environmental Management, which take their guidelines from the federal EPA. And so specifically in this case, I called and asked, about OSB plants. And OSB plants in Alabama require a minor air permit. And so, there's a lot of chemicals or things that air permits measure. Just like a vehicle that you drive, before that vehicle is allowed to be produced, it emits, fumes that come out of it. And as long as they meet the regulations that are set forth in the EPA and 8M guidelines, they're allowed to produce those, and you're allowed to drive them. So it's a similar type process, as I understand it, with 8M. Many businesses in town and throughout the Wiregrass have those. I highlighted a few. Not all of these have air permits, but have ADEM permitting that they have to go through. So HS Automotive, Sessions Peanuts, Arista Aviation, all have some compliance standards that they have to meet with ADEM, which is public record. OSB plant would not have a significant amount of effluent or discharge, meaning that they're not dumping a lot of things into our sewer system. And water usage is primarily to keep wood wet that's stored outside, and also in the event they have fire suppression, they may need an in-ground or above-ground storage tank for insurance purposes. So with that, I listed a lot of those things here after some notes talking to ADEM, but two things that really I want to highlight. Even after the city's processes for industry that might need to be regulated by ADEM, they have to go through two different processes, one through ADEM, which requires a 30-day public notice to allow for public input, and one a 45-day review period for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. As of today, none of those have even been started with ADEM. So when we talk about what might be there or what could come, once it's zoned M2, there's a potential for everything that our zoning ordinance allows M2. The ID board ultimately in this case would have, in de facto, the council would have a lot of say and input into who they were selling land to, who they leased it to. But as of today, none of this has even been started. There's no on-file application with Alabama Department of Environmental Management. Traffic, another big concern that a lot of people on that tour had. So, ask questions about how many trucks per day at that facility. 100 to 150 was the answer, trucks per day incoming to the site. The proximity of US 84 makes it ideal to handle additional truck traffic. Obviously, we don't want that in the city limits or through residential neighborhoods, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. But regardless of these type of industry in the wood manufacturing, assuming that they have a certain geography to be within, let's say they had to be in Coffee, Dale County, the Florida Panhandle, some of that truck traffic will come through here. And if it's not in the city limits, it might be out in the county, and they don't have zoning. But the trucks have got to get from where they're getting timber to a plant, and then they go back to where they're getting the timber from. Some 60% of that is to the north and to the west of Enterprise. Some 40% is to the south. So depending on, if it was in Defuniak Springs, a plant like this, trucks from the north and the west would have to get down to Defuniak Springs. If it was towards Dale County, from the west, they'd have to traverse through, roughly Enterprise to get there, and so forth and so on. So specifically, this site, this roughly 296 acres on the top, I know a lot of people in the back may not be able to read. It's even tough for me. But this is ALDOT's traffic count. And so in 22 average daily traffic along US 84 going towards Elba was 10,471 cars per day. Towards Dothan, same buildup of road, same width, everything about the road is the same in terms of construction. And what it's built to handle for capacity is double that at almost 22,000 cars or vehicles per day. So the road has capacity, and current ordinances prohibit truck traffic on city streets. Now, that's not the case, and I know some people have brought up, hey, you see a truck downtown. Well, it's a state road, and legally they are allowed to do that. However, if the ID board were to acquire this property, they will not allow truck access into the site off of Moats Road, and their intent is whoever is a tenant in that park to encourage truck traffic to utilize the bypass, even if that means from a contractual obligation to the extent that they can get that. So now I'd like to shift to some of the benefits that they have discussed about industrial properties here in town. And so one of the stated goals of this administration is to diversify the industrial base and decrease the reliance on Fort Novosel. Everybody's heard about a base realignment and closure and fearful of a BRAC, and certainly heard the numbers, in the billions of dollars anyway for the economic impact that Fort Novosel has on the Wiregrass. However, if something were to happen, what other jobs and industry would be here to sustain businesses and employment? Another goal is to find higher wage jobs. And so, consistently, you say, well, what does that mean? So I pulled some data off of the Department of Labor's website. And if you look on the county map, again, I'll try to read it so everybody can you can't see it in the back, but Coffee County, $18.30 an hour. Dale County, $27.50. Well, that's because Fort Novosel has, really high-paying jobs compared to the labor market in this area. So, jobs that would be above $18.30, would help elevate the GDP, the quality of life, the living conditions for people that were able to get those here in our area. So if you look on the Department of Labor's website, they have wood product manufacturing as a subcategory. There's roughly, I think it was 12,000 some odd jobs in that segment. And then it showed their total wages. So you divide the total wages by the number of jobs by 2,080, and you can come up with the average wage. That was $24.35, which is 33% higher than the average wage for the average job in Coffee County. Additional industrial property, as I stated, the Industrial Development Board looked, and observed, hey, we don't have sites of 50-plus acres. We don't have rail serve sites. And if Enterprise wants to continue to grow, if we want to do our job as an Industrial Development Board, we should find properties that could do that. On the rail service, you can look and just see to the south of us in Geneva County or in Elba, this same short line that Genesee and Wyoming has here in Enterprise used to run to Elba, and that rail was pulled back. Geneva County used to have rail running the length of the county, and they don't have any rail in the county today. Once it's pulled up, it doesn't come back. We're down to one rail-served customer in the city of Enterprise today. So, you talk about what that means. Well, that one rail customer, another rail customer on there defers their cost to operate, saves them money. And every one after that saves all the businesses that money that is currently being borne by one rail customer. It's an essential component to a diverse industrial base, and its absence limits the nature of businesses willing to locate in a community. So, saying that, the ID board looked, and these are roughly the parameters of the city limits, at least with rail. So where is it possible to find a 100-plus acre site in the city limits along rail? And so I've highlighted in yellow kind of the route of the rail that runs, up US 84 towards Elba, and then down through the downtown area, and then along Coppinville Road, kind of near Walmart and behind there. And you will see that there are a couple of sites that maybe that you could consider, but then you look at like what's around them, and are they developable pieces of property? Can you buy them? Is the property owner willing to sell them? And so the Industrial Development Board looked, and this is more of a close-up of that area, that in their minds, the highest and best use, if we're going to have a rail serve site or potential to have a rail serve site, we would want to get land that has access to a U.S. 4-lane road because we don't have an interstate. We would want to have rail access or be adjacent to rail. And, we would want to have enough room that this park could serve the community for a long period of time. and, look at what other industries are in and around those areas. So if you go up, from Sessions Peanuts to Utility Trailer to the UPS store to where Duracast was in the North Industrial Park, and now that's been sold off into a few different industries, but all those are zoned M2. And then you go up further to the Yancey Parker Industrial Park, Phase 1 and Phase 2, which is also zoned M2 there. And this is the same zoning. Where the VA home was, that roughly 200 and some acres that was purchased was all zoned M2 at one point. And that zoning came back when another use was found for it. Additionally, I'll just point out Shell Field's on there, and we love Fort Novacell and the folks that work there and train there. And but if you were taking an outside viewpoint of what our industrial properties are, that would certainly be one of them. And so I just ask, if not here, where? So.
All right, thank you. Any other staff comments? All right, we'll now allow any members of the general public to voice their support or opposition to the project, including any specific concerns they feel the council should take into consideration. So we'll try to do this in an orderly manner. Is there, if everybody who wishes to speak, could you raise your hand? All right, I'll call y'all up on my own. Yes, sir, you here on the front.
How you guys doing? My name's Scott Childers. I lived in Enterprise now for 27 years. Helicopters brought me here. Sound is not a problem with helicopters. My biggest concern with this potential opportunity of growth is chemicals. The one thing he did leave out in his presentation is one of the major components of creating this wood is formaldehyde. We have our city park right across the street. We have a neighborhood just due north of this location with 80 homes in it. There's hundreds of homes within the 1 mile vicinity, including the high school. Trucks won't bring that formaldehyde into this environment. It will be the rail system. It's one thing that we can transport peanut oil, but formaldehyde, run that through this on our train tracks, we've all seen them. That's dangerous. And I hope that some people who might have safety backgrounds with them understand and really do the due diligence in finding out what safety hazards that might bring this to our city. I mean, I'm all about growth and enterprise, but do we need this industry here? We could put a chicken house there. I mean, a home, or the chicken plant there, but we wouldn't do that because we didn't want those that environment inside of our city limits. We could have brought Ben and Keith in here. We still benefit from these same companies, but they're outside in the county a little bit further. But we can still benefit from those. We don't need them inside of our city limits. And that's my biggest concern. And I appreciate all y'all's work on this, and I hope y'all take that into deep consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Childers. Who else? If somebody would just come forward.
I really am just wanted to like a point of clarification more than anything else. I'm very familiar with that area and Enterprise because I live in downtown Enterprise and I grew up in downtown Enterprise. And the rail, as it goes through town, it has a Y off connector to Sessions, and the rail crosses Pittman Street. And then the rail crosses 84 there, and it continues down on that side of 84 as it exists today. And the land that we're talking about is on the opposite side of 84, correct? Not
Yes.
on the same side as the rail.
That's correct. It's on the west side.
So if the industry that's moving in to this site needs rail, logistically, how are we going to get the rail over to the site of the new plant without disrupting traffic? I mean, are we going to move the whole rail to the other side of the road and therefore it would cross the entrance to Enterprise High School? Would the rail, continue on down that side of the road? Would the rail go on the side of the road that it is now, where it crosses, 84 and then the bypass, and then somewhere further down 84, it would have to go back across 84 again? I guess I'm just a little, I'm pro-rail. My grandmother's farm, my family farm, that rail used to run through it in Clintonville. So I didn't want the rail pulled up when they pulled it up then. But I'm just sitting here thinking about the logistics of it and the school buses and the high school, and I don't really see how it works on that side of if we move the rail over to that side of the road with those school buses. And I was against putting the school there. I didn't think that was a good idea to put that school there to begin with, or the one Coppinville that's on the bypass, because of these very reasons and because of economic development. But now we've done that, and they're there. So how do we address that? That's just food for thought.
I'll try to get that question answered for you. All right, who else? Yes, sir. Yeah, and if you could, I know this was Robin Foy speaking, but if you could, please tell everybody your name before you speak.
Hi there, I'm Linda Bays, and I'm here this evening to speak for the people of Turtleback community. I'm glad I didn't bring my name. We just found out about this over the weekend. I know that you all have done your due diligence, and you made a lovely presentation and tied it with a bow. However, this is a big deal in our community, and we need to have awareness out there to everyone. We did not receive the letter about this, nor did probably some of the other people, because I think more people would be here tonight. There is not one person that I have spoken to who wants this in our neighborhood. A manufacturing plant that operates 24 hours a day, even though, we're skimming over all of the important things like the chemicals that are going to be in the air that we're all going to be breathing, whether you're in Turtleback or downtown, it will float in that direction. And I think the safety is very important. The other thing is, we don't even have a newspaper to get our information anymore. And the signs that were posted that I've never seen were on a road where we drive 65 miles an hour. Very unsafe to take a gander at a board. So we would like to ask you to table the approval of this so that we can get the awareness out to everyone in our community. As far as your site visit to the Langboard OSB facility, I did a little research on that, and the downtown area and the residential is in one area, and the plant is like 6 miles away. And what you're proposing is to put this OSB facility right smack dab in the middle of all these beautiful custom homes that have been built. It's not the right place. Let's face it, Enterprise is a residential community. Yes, we want business. We understand that you want to grow our community, and we want to thank you for everything that you have done up until this point. I have only been here 3 years, but I have met so many people whose lives have been touched by Enterprise, the friendliness, the warmth of this community. They've come here, traveled around the world, and have come back because this is a fabulous place to live. We want to continue to live that lifestyle. And we want to feel like we can breathe clean air and not be worried about sending our children, this is going to be close to the schools, churches, and homes, is something for you guys to really consider. Do we really, really need this? Is there another way to bring in revenue to our city for people to make money, to earn an income? And the other thing about this Quitman, Georgia location, there's only 4,000 people population there. We have over 30,000. They live in 34% poverty level. We don't have that here. Why do we want to introduce this to our community? If you would please consider delaying your vote to change what is already existing, which is a zoning for business, to manufacturing. We would greatly appreciate it. I will do everything in my power, and so will the people in my community, to get the word out to more people so that this room can be filled and we can have a real public hearing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir, in the back.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, my name is Rod Peterson. I've lived in Enterprise now for about 8 years, and when learned about this and listening to the presentation that the gentleman gave, I have lived near facilities like this, and I will tell you, I don't know what y'all smelled, I don't doubt that, but the smell at times can be overwhelming and putrid. And has there been any downwind reports done? Because where I live, the predominant wind blows from that side from across 84 across where I live. Nobody has talked about the effect of property values and moving into that part of Enterprise. Nobody's talked about the effects on the community. We're talking about the effects on development, moving away from dependence on Fort Novacell. And he mentioned BRAC. Well, if you pull up BRAC, Fort Novacell is not on that list. And I doubt very seriously it will be. Since I work out there, there's no other where in the United States that's capable of training Army aviators right now. And I don't think the government has the money to build a facility to do that. So I don't think we have a problem with Fort Novacell going anywhere. I'm not against bringing in further development and trying to bring in industry. But my question is, why in the city limits? Why not outside of county? If you can move it someplace outside, would it not still have some kind of economic impact on Enterprise without necessarily putting it in an area where it could adversely affect the communities, property values? You mentioned the traffic for the schools. You mentioned the traffic on 84, potential traffic through Enterprise itself. We're talking about the chemicals. I know what chemicals are used in those plants and the chemicals being brought in. All that stuff has been mentioned before. What impact is that going to have on the neighboring communities? Nobody's mentioned anything about that. I will say this much, that if that plant does go forth, I'm selling my house and leaving Enterprise. Okay, that's just how that's going to be. And I'm not making that as an idle threat. Please don't interpret that as such. But I want you to know nobody's talked about the impact of the communities. You've got Henderson Park over there that every Saturday is crammed full of ball games of various types. What's that going to do with the traffic? What's that going to do with people coming and going? How's that going to affect? Because you've got houses on both sides of 84. You've got more developments even going in over there. Not to mention the fact you just built, or you're in the process of building that veterans home on 51, which if you look at the predominant wind, especially in the summer, that blows right across 84 heading in that direction. Nobody's talked about that. I know those environmental assessments have to be made, and my concern is that we are so focused on progress and moving forward that we're going to march ahead and force this through when it might not be the best way to do business here in Enterprise. I just ask you guys to consider that and to look at all the options before we do that. I understand that property might meet all of the requirement needs, but is it the best place to put that plant? And I have never heard anybody answer that question. Oh, it's the only place we can put it in the city limits. Does it have to be in the city limits? Nobody's answered that question. Because is there a place we could move it where we could still have that same economic impact for the city? That's all I'm asking, is that the assessments be made and all aspects looked at this. Because there is a lot of potential hazards we're willing to take to bring that plant in here. Transportation of chemicals, the traffic, the increased smells, all of that. So I just ask that the Development Council, please look at possibly moving it somewhere else and still have that same impact. Give the builder options rather than you're so narrow focused with blinders on that this is the only place it can go. See if there's not another location we could find and see if that wouldn't also meet your requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, Mr. Gould, you asked where you lived?
I live in Turtleback.
Turtleback.
So I'm really within a mile of where that plant's going to go. Okay. So, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Please forgive me if my voice shakes. I'm very nervous. I don't usually speak in
That's
public, but my name is Alicia Bacotes. I'm here for my second time in Enterprise. I was here in 2015, and I'm aware of the amazing growth that has occurred here between now and when I moved back in 2022. I was blown away by how beautiful the downtown area had become, and how the city had grown. We've actually decided to stay here when my husband retires. I have 3 children, and I just wanted to mention a few things that weren't brought up by my neighbors. First of all, I was able to spend all last night and today researching the process of making OSB on Google Scholar. Google Scholar is all peer-reviewed information and studies on the effects of these chemicals and the process, not just the chemicals, the wood dust, everything involved. The number one thing I'm concerned about your visit is that they weren't doing any compression and gluing that day. The gluing process is very strong. I have a son with asthma and I have a son with eczema, and I will tell you that there have been studies done for long-term exposure to formaldehyde decreases lung capacity in people that have asthma. It increases instances of asthma in children and contact dermatitis in children because they're growing and developing with formaldehyde in their system. Okay? The other problem is it causes nose cancer. It causes throat cancer. You're going to see a huge increase in cancer. Why do I know this? I grew up in a place called Charleston, West Virginia. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's nicknamed Chemical Valley. The city decided to make the decision to put plants like this in the middle of the city. And once they opened the floodgates, more and more were built. My papa had 11 brothers and sisters. 8 of them died from cancer. And only the men worked in the plants. The women died too. I have seen spills happen consistently. There's alarms that have to go off if they spill, and everybody has to go inside. They have to lock down the schools. So you're wanting to put these chemicals right through our, the middle of our city. I've had friends that still live in West Virginia that had to go like months without water at one point within the past few years because of a spill. So I just, this is personal experience for me, and I didn't even mention the fact that it made the whole valley smell like, rotten eggs sometimes or various other things. And I just, I hate to see us take this in the wrong direction. I want industry. I grew up in a blue-collar family. I'm not anti-rail. I'm not anti-industry, but an OSB plant in our city in the middle of it is very scary to me. And by the way, I also live in Turtleback, so I would be probably selling my house and moving if this goes forward.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I also live in Turtleback Subdivision. My name is Jonathan Bryant. I've lived here in this town my whole life, 37 years. I understand trying to get away from depending on Fort Novosel or Fort Rooker, as we all loved and called it, and still do. If it weren't for that military base, my family would have been without a home. My mother worked in a textile mill, used to be called Pridecraft. It got taken away, left the city of Enterprise. That was a lot of jobs that left. My dad worked at Fort Novosel or Fort Rooker back then, and that was the only thing that kept my family afloat. I work there now. If it worked for Fort Novosel, Enterprise wouldn't be the city of progress like it is, or the retirement city. One thing I would like to add that my neighbors have already touched on, most of these facilities, if not all, you can do your research, I've done mine, they break EPA laws all the time. They find that it's cheaper to pay the fine than it is to update their systems and equipment. That's in every industry, including Atlanta. They've been fighting that battle a long time. Montgomery as well. So I would ask that City Council please take into consideration our neighborhood, our kids. I lived here my whole life. I want to see it grow. There's been a lot of places leave from Enterprise that should have never left, textile mills and so on. But if you would, please put this to the side and let us get more information out to the public. That it touches a lot more people than just our neighborhood. And I would ask y'all to consider, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? Mr. Tullis, would you mind coming back? See if we can get a couple of these things clarified. So there was a question, I'll try to go in order. There was a question asked about rail and how that might access the site. I realize we don't have any definite plans, but so.
Excuse me. A lot of that would depend on, what was built or designed. To date, we have no, design plans in the engineering department to review. But in general, the thought process would be that it would take some radius across US 84 to do a rail spur into the park. So don't know exactly where that is. That would all be dependent on ALDOT approval, on, railroad approval. I'm not an engineer with the rail company, but I understand they have, they can't make a 90-degree turn, for
Right.
instance. So I don't know exactly what that would look like, but a lot of it would depend on, what ultimately ended up in the park.
And any idea on the rail traffic relative to what we already experienced, which is not heavy, obviously?
So I believe that the company that we met with looked at, I want to say it was like 40 cars a week in terms of rail traffic.
Yeah. So not a high volume
Not
on a daily basis.
No, a week.
So there was some concerns brought up about putting this plant in the middle of a bunch of custom homes and everything. I know there's been a lot of talk about specifically in the event. Obviously, we're talking about 300-acre rezone, which would be M2. We've got a lot of M2 already in town, and we've got an M2 within 1,000 feet of Turtleback subdivision, which I believe most of the people here tonight are from. So this is about 5 times the distance from there. But explain a little bit about the buffers available via the trees and
Yeah, so one of the unique advantages, I guess, of the proposed site is that there's already planted pines that are, cover the site or the majority of it. And so from just generally, obfuscating a view, reducing noise, buffering there, I think, those details would have to be worked out with the ID board and any potential tenant that would go there. So, and de facto by the city council, the ID board has no funding mechanism to do any of these things, save some action by the council. So, in essence, when you buy property for industrial development, like we did with the Dozier property, that's the most recent that I can think of, and that happened, I think, in around 2018. There was no intent or idea about, exactly what was going to go there. We just knew from, when I was doing economic development at the time and speaking with the ID board that we were getting low on inventory, which was land. So if we were going to build something else, or somebody was going to move a manufacturing plant or whatever else might be permitted in there, that, we needed land, we needed product. So we found, at that time, we did a search, citywide. We worked with our utility providers about, good sites, that had infrastructure, because, you can buy the property and then you can spend a lot more trying to extend, water, sewer, electricity to the site. And so we identified some sites, and then we had to worry about our finances. What can we afford? If money was no object, there's certainly a lot of different properties that could be great for industrial development. But we settled on that plan, talking about all those things. So once they procured the land, we had 2 or 3 different projects that looked at that site. I heard one of the people here tonight talk about Benny Keith. That was one of the sites that they looked at. However, it didn't have access directly onto US 84, and so ultimately that site was ruled out. Ultimately, part of that property was viewed by the Veterans Home in a submission by the City of Enterprise to the Alabama Department of Veterans Affairs. And so at that time, the property was zoned M2, and it was contingent on being able to rezone it back into medical or some other conforming use for the site. And so that's how that kind of transpired. This would be a similar situation. We think we have people interested in it, but as I said, sometimes these projects don't work out. In fact, more often than not, they don't. Now, I think this is a real project, and it could happen. It could also not happen.
So what we're doing tonight is considering whether to rezone the property. We're not considering whether to authorize an OSB facility to be built in the City of Enterprise.
Correct. We have no current plans with our engineering department, no permitting with the state, nothing that would even begin to let us talk about a facility being built there.
So this request to delay the rezone, there's insinuations that there's no more due diligence periods between now and some hypothetical OSB facility being built. There will be many more checkpoints of due diligence and reports and ability. There's even 2 additional public comment periods, correct?
There are that ADEM requires, but, ultimately, even if these property owners were to get it rezoned, there would be the decision on the Industrial Development Board potentially acquiring the property.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, they don't have money sitting in a bank account ready to go purchase this, tomorrow morning. So there would have to be some sort of funding mechanism or something to take down the property and acquire it. But they don't want to acquire property that isn't zoned properly.
Right.
So there are several other steps that would need to be taken. Then a project development agreement would have to be done between the city and whatever company came in, whether it's OSB or automotive supplier or whatever, which is currently not done. And then ultimately, the ID board would have to approve that development agreement or the city council. And ultimately, that development agreement, you can look at some recent projects like Arista Aviation or HSAA. They have different clawbacks, contractual obligations. Most of our recent industrial parks have, covenants in them, which you can and can't do, where trucks can access, where they can't. A lot of different things in there that, none of that's been done because the ID board doesn't even own the property.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about property values. Is there any indication that an M2 designation negatively affects property values within the vicinity? We've got a perfect example of M2 designation, Turtleback subdivision, Tartan Pines subdivision behind, closer to Sessions Peanuts than, say, this plant will be to Turtleback. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would just say that if you use that example with Turtleback, they're roughly somewhere between 900 and 1,000 feet from the property line of the subdivision to M2 zoned Yancey Parker Industrial Park Phase 1 and 2. So I believe that park and the at least the biggest industry in there, HS Automotive, was certainly there prior to the subdivision being developed. So, people still bought homes in that subdivision at whatever price they bought it, knowing that there was M2 there. There was additional property that was zoned, and while it's a veteran's home now, even closer up 51, that there was no objection at that particular time that I remember. Now there may have been for that, and ultimately it got zoned back to medical. But I would imagine, without having to do a whole lot of research, that if you looked at the property values when Turtleback subdivision was built, I would just say that if I looked on the property record card on GIS, that the assessed values are up over time. So
another question about why in the city limits. So I think that question insinuates that other sites were not explored, that to the extent the company winds up locating here, did they not look at other sites and do feasibility on those sites, and why this specific site? I know you said that in your presentation, but why don't you go over that again?
I think any company does due diligence about where they want to locate in today's economic development climate. More and more they use advanced metrics, and they can drop a pin on a map and say, hey, I need to be within X number of feet or miles of this location for a lot of reasons. I would imagine that in a perfect world, if this company or one like it were to be in Elba, Alabama, and they had rail, they might be in Elba, Alabama. And a lot of companies might do that because of Elba's proximity to things that aren't enterprise. We're 15 or 20 miles, depending on where you are, further away from what Elba is, and so forth and so on. So there's a lot of, rail-served companies, and we're stuck on this OSB thing, but really we're talking about an industrial park that has the opportunity to attract whatever. And ultimately, if due diligence is done and a plan is submitted that either the council or the industrial development board disagree with, then their options are not to execute a contract, not to sell it. They're in control. This isn't a private company that would otherwise just have it on the market and whoever bought it. And even if they did. And it was permitted in the zoning, they would still have to comply by statute with our current zoning ordinances and regulations and whatever the state and EPA have.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Tullis? Turn your microphone on.
I think someone asked about chemicals. I know we talked about smell. Is any additional formaldehyde and again, I understand we are voting on the land use, but
Sure.
just answer the questions.
So if, there are, to my knowledge, in talking to ADEM, there are three, again, I'm not an expert on OSB plants, and I'll certainly look into that. I did get a link through ADEM. Like I said, there's public records that are out there. There are 3 OSB plants that I know that are permitted in Alabama, and those 3 plants have an annual report. So you can kind of see what chemicals or whatever that they're in terms of air permitting that they might be emitting, and then how they're mitigated. Those kind of things are in the report. And, at least from the air permit side, like I said, I got that today. I haven't done a ton of research on it, but, and a lot of those same chemicals you would find, emitted from a vehicle. Now, not to say that there aren't formaldehyde I don't know, and I'll do some more research on that.
But in the event the company does, in the event we do rezone M2, company does choose to relocate here and they move forward, they'll have to apply for an air permit, and
They will.
We'll
And
we'll have access to all that information.
Correct. And like I said, just because, I use that example of the project because that was something that, we've heard scuttlebutt, and it could be a real possibility. But we are not, this gets approved and tomorrow there's going to be some plant here. That's just not a factual statement. There is still a lot of development that has to be done, submitted, and a lot of due diligence that still hasn't been done, that has very little to do with the rezone of the property.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Ellis before we close the hearing? Of course, we'll have opportunity to deliberate amongst ourselves after we close the hearing. All right. Hearing none, we will now close the hearing and move to council consideration of the ordinance. So, council, as always, will need a motion and a second before we go into deliberation. So I will now call for consideration of ordinance 010224.
I move to adopt ordinance 010224.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 010224. Is there any discussion, comments from the council?
Well,
Go ahead, Sonia.
just, when we advertise, we're advertising for this particular action for the rezone. And I want to just point out, I think I heard that we advertised twice, whether we think it's I just want to put that on record that we did advertise. Because that was mentioned. in
Right,
one of
the
comments
rezone and
right,
and
we
the
did.
property
We advertised
owner.
for the rezone.
The property owner
Right.
posted the signs that were referenced. Any other? Well, I've got a few comments. I was on the tour of the facility. Of course, it was through my professional life. I've been on multiple tours of forest product facilities, so very familiar, but had never toured a facility like this under the context of would I want this facility in our community. The community, by the way, that I live in and I'm raising my family in. So I share your concerns, share every one of them. I think a few of you could witness that I was actually, to begin with, a skeptic of the project, which, to Jonathan's point, we don't know. There's certainly no guarantee, but obviously that's what precipitated the rezone request. So I think it's important that everybody knows, what precipitated that. So, my concerns were odor, noise, health, both water and air quality. Traffic was a big concern of mine. Obviously, we've got to balance those with what I feel is an obligation of the council to seek job growth, economic stability, preserving rail for reasons we've talked tonight. We talk often. I invite y'all to come to our strategic planning sessions. We talk often about our weaknesses as a community, and reliance on things like Fort Novosel or Fort Rucker, the lack of industrial park space, and to Jonathan's point, if not here, then where would we put it? Unfortunately, rezones are always the most controversial subjects we take up because it's always in somebody's backyard, right? Nobody from the south side of town came and addressed us tonight because it's not perceived to be in their backyard. Unfortunately, we are limited on where we can put these. Obviously, on a 5-lane U.S. Highway 84, adjacent to rail, contiguous with other M2 developments, like he talked. This is the best place for this to go in the city as far as an industrial park. I'm convinced of that. I do think that there are opportunities for buffers to be put in place, as spoken about earlier. And I do think that most of you will be surprised at the quality, assuming the project goes forward, at the lack of nuisance that the project is. Now, ma'am, you spoke to the fact that no compression and gluing went on while we were there. That's just an absolute untrue. Ma'am,
They were gluing.
They were gluing and compressing while we were there. That's an untrue statement. I feel that many of the statements made tonight were rather hyperbolic and exaggerations. The comments of putrid smells and those things, just not true. Based on our observations. Again, this was not my first tour of a facility like this. I personally stood there, listened, smelled, witnessed the operation. While I share your concerns, I must balance those with the positive trade-offs, and I do think that this rezone, specifically what we're addressing tonight, is a net benefit to our community. Obviously, there's risk. There's risk with our current economy. I mean, whether it's 18-wheelers running through towns, helicopters flying around our neighborhoods, there are inherent risks to a vibrant economy. There are also inherent risks to a governing body that does not go out and pursue growth. There are risks involved in that. So we must constantly weigh these things. These are difficult decisions, but I also want to point out that this is not the end point. Y'all are asking for us to call a timeout and slow down. This is not the end point. We will continue our due diligence. We still have multiple trigger points where we can shut this down if we get uncomfortable with it. This is not the end point. This is just another step in the process. So I encourage you to continue to reach out, provided it passes. I'm certainly supportive of these rezones. So I can encourage you to continue to reach out to your elected officials. Come sit down with us. We're all available. Y'all, most of you have our email addresses because you've sent us emails. I'm available by phone or to meet in person to continue to discuss these. And I've also done my research, like many of you have. So those are my comments on it. I don't know does anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was one of those skeptics too. 38 years in the Army as active, and then 13 as a civilian out there. As a safety officer, Scott knows, I went in there thinking, okay, I lived in Savannah Station down there. That was a paper mill. That was a bad smell. You got to remember, when I walked into this place or got out of the bus, there was no smell at all. The only smell that I got from that place was when we were inside a little bit and it smelled like fresh lumber. Even outside when they brought the lumber in and was stacking it and putting it in the thing, there was no smell, noise, and I'm a big believer in PPE, protective equipment, and the folks working around there wore that. We had to wear some of the PPE too. I worked with OSHA, EPA through the Army. I worked in hangars, and that's my mindset when I walked in there. I said, this is a big hangar. And I've had more smells, more stuff coming out of a hangar, maintenance and stuff, than I had in there. I was pleasantly surprised with the cleanliness and everything. In fact, I told one guy, one where they were having all the TVs to watch everything, I said, man, you can eat off the floor in here. But I changed my mind when I went through that. And I was thinking of not only my grandkids, one of my great-grandkids that live around here too, and as well as everybody else in the community. But yeah, the smells and stuff, like they said, they were definitely gluing when we were there. I walked right next to the place where they were, and I didn't get that. And I'll just get off my box.
Any other council comments?
I unfortunately was not able to go. I had just tested positive COVID the day before this trip was taken, so I had to cancel. But I typically am in favor of rezones because I know that there are a lot more opportunities to stop projects after the rezone, because it's just a step towards, as due diligence continues to be done and as research continues to happen. So knowing that this isn't an end zone, this is the end of it, I typically am in favor of a rezone. The other thing about it is, whether this project comes or not, this area of property does fit within our strategic plan. All the research that was done, we had engineering firms come in and help us do a strategic plan and map out the whole city on best use of land, and that area fits right in with a contingent M2 manufacturing district area with a strategic plan. So this area is already on our strategic plan as a potential M2, whether this project comes or not. The other thing, I think it's highly important that we don't lose our rail. And so this property, being a industrial park right there at the rail, gives us a much better opportunity to keep that rail than if we were to locate it somewhere else, regardless of what project comes to the park.
Any other comments from the council?
This piece of property.
Turn your microphone's off.
This piece of property is in my district, District 2, and I've had many calls and emails from the residents, especially from Turtleback, and I do understand your concerns. And I was unable to visit the plant because I was just recovering from back surgery, but I have to listen to the comments from those who did visit, talking about the noise, the smell, etc. But again, to remind you tonight, we're not voting on this plant coming here, whether it does or whether it does not. Tonight, we're only voting on rezoning, and I will vote in favor of the rezone, and I think there's plenty of time for everybody to research and get more information about the OSB plant. Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
I would just like to say that I too had a chance to attend this trip that we made over there, Georgia. Moving into the area where the plant was located really was not actually recognizable from the highway in a sense, and it's one of the cleanest places that I've ever visited. I know I was born and reared in Dothan, and we could smell later on in the evening that paper mill coming from over across the river there at Blakely and Donaldsonville or somewhere. But this facility was different, and where you had to go in certain areas, there was protective gear given to each one of us, and we were given an explanation on what was this and what was that. And really and truly, as far as being outside, you couldn't really hear anything, but on the inside it was different. And that everybody was given the opportunity to ask questions and to see what was being done. And all the equipment was clean, and whatever was being done there was done decent and in order. But as we are working here tonight, it's not the matter of us bringing a plan in per se, but getting the land rezoned as we do with others. We have other rezones where it's for housing and rezoned for this and that and the other. And I can understand the residents and knowing about your neighborhood and whatnot, but I don't want anybody to feel that we would do anything that would try to run anybody away. We are trying to grow a progressive city, and what we do here is for the betterment of our citizens. So let us all try to work together and be united as one. And if there are any differences, we will try to iron them out before we come to a conclusion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any more comments?
I'd just like to also say that, it's been mentioned a few times tonight, both in the presentation and from the audience, about dependence on Fort Novacell. I've lived in Enterprise since I was 3 years old. I don't even hear the helicopters anymore because it's such a prevalent noise. Very thankful that we have Fort Novacell, because I know that otherwise we would not have the city that we have right now. And we talk about at times whether we're concerned about it leaving or not. I don't think it's a great possibility because it is the home of Army Aviation, and there's quite a bit of cost associated with moving that. But it hasn't been that long ago that we had hundreds of people showing up in support because there was a tour around to decide which bases to close. And one of the reasons that we were told that they didn't seriously consider that base was because of the huge amount of support from this area. So who knows what's going to happen in the future? So my concern is when I'm long and gone and my great-grandkids are living here and someone decides it's time to close Fort Novosel, what did I put into place to create a future if that were to happen so that we could continue to have the city that we know and love? So it's a big concern of mine that we put all of our eggs in one basket. I think we need to be diversified, and not everyone works out there. Not everyone is qualified to work out there. We need a diversity of industry so different people with different interests and abilities can have places to work.
Any more comments? All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 010224. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will now move on to a public hearing and consideration of ordinance 010224A, which is the Connor Family Partnership LTD Rezone 2. I now call for a public hearing prior to consideration of ordinance 010224A, providing for the rezone of 1.09 acres of land owned by Connor Family Partnership LTD from R75S Residential District to M2 General Manufacturing District, located at the intersection of Highway 84 and Moats Road. This public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak for or against? Yes, sir.
I guess this gives us a caveat here. When the zoning signs do go up, they don't say that this is going to be changing into an industrial complex. You have to go and do your due diligence and research and dig and find out what that is changing into. So maybe because when I saw the signs, honestly, the way we've been growing, I thought we were getting a new neighborhood. Seriously. I didn't expect it to be an industrial park. I really thought we was building more houses, bringing more people into this town. So in the future, if we do have some kind of rezoning type issues, maybe have it more clear for people who do drive by at 65 miles or 55 miles an hour, that 45, thank you, Scott, that they are able to understand exactly what's going on. Nobody reads a newspaper anymore. We know that. Newspapers are worthless. So we need to get a better way of communicating this out to the people, and so there is an understanding of what's going on in their neighborhoods. All right? I appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mary Ann Thomas, Turtleback. I just have one quick comment. We moved to Turtleback in December. There was never a smell coming from HSAA. When you come into our neighborhood in July, June, July, August, you smell burning rubber coming from our neighborhood. So you can go, I don't know if this is, I am not an industrial engineer, but, there will be a scent coming from that. And I guarantee you, everybody who moved into our neighborhood, and when that plant was being put in, they were told the exact same thing, that there would not be an odor coming from that plant. They built our neighborhood, I don't know if it was before or after HSAA. But that is my point right there, when you say that there is no odor, and you can go there now and not smell anything. Come back out in June, July, and you will smell the burning rubber. And that's my only comment right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, we will now close the public hearing and call for consideration of ordinance 010224A.
I move to adopt ordinance 010224A.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 010224A. Any further comments from the council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now move to public hearing and consideration for ordinance 010224B, the Clark Lands LLP rezone. I call for a public hearing prior to consideration of ordinance 010224B, providing for the rezone of 81.05 acres of land owned by Clark Lands LLP, FKA Clark Farms Limited Partnership, from R75S Residential District to AGR and AGR Agricultural District to M2 General Manufacturing District, located at the intersection of Highway 84 and Moats Road. This public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak for or against? All right, seeing no one, I will now close the public hearing and call for consideration of ordinance 010224B.
I move to adopt ordinance 010224B.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further consideration or conversation, deliberation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now move on to public hearing and consideration of ordinance 010224C, the Moats Plantation LLC rezone. I call for a public hearing prior to consideration of ordinance 010224C, providing for the rezone of 17.04 acres of land owned by Moats Plantation LLC from R75S Residential District to M2 General Manufacturing District, located at the intersection of Highway 84 and Moats Road. This public hearing is now open. Is there anyone that wishes to speak for or against? All right, seeing no one, I will now close the hearing and call for consideration of ordinance 010224C.
Move to adopt ordinance 010224C.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now have a public hearing and consideration of ordinance 010224D, the Connor Family Partnership, LTD, Moats Plantation, LLC rezone. I call for a public hearing prior to consideration of ordinance 010224D, providing for the rezone of 35.32 acres of land owned by Connor Family Partnership, LTD, and Moats Plantation, LLC, from R75S Residential District to M2 General Manufacturing District, located at the intersection of Highway 84 and Moats Road. This public hearing is now open. Is there anyone that wishes to speak for or against? Seeing no one, I will now close the public hearing and call for consideration of ordinance 010224D.
I move that we adopt ordinance 010224D.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 010224D. Any further comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now move on to review and consider bid recommendation for the 2021 CDBG Demolition Project Phase 7. I introduce and call for consideration of a recommendation from David Ewing, project consultant, to award the bid for the 2021 CDBG Demolition Project Phase 7 to Hopper Moore Incorporated, DBA BMI. The qualified low bid of $37,765 exceeds the remaining CDBG budget by $21,275. If the city opts to inject the $21,275 budget shortfall, the city can choose the deductive alternates in numerical order to determine the low qualified bid. The award of one or both of the deductive alternates would still result in BMI being the responsible low bidder. If the city chooses to select deductive alternate number one, the low bid would total $21,990, which would require the city to inject $5,500 in city funds to complete the demolition of structures 5 located at 3841 Plaza Drive and the mobile home located at 117 Sim Street. Structure at 900 Alberta Street would not be included in the contract. If the city chooses to select deductive alternate number 1 and deductive alternate number 2, the low bid would total $18,930, which would require the city to inject $2,440 in city funds to complete the demolition of the structures 5 located at 3841 Plaza Drive. The structure located at 900 Alberta and 117 Sim Street would not be included in the contract. So you can see there the bids received are as follows. I'm not going to read all those. I've already read those, but 3841 Plaza, 117 Sim Street, 900 Alberta, for a total of $37,765. And then the deduct 1 and 2 are $15,775 and $3,060 respectively. And you can see there Lewis Incorporated's bids were higher. So we ran out of time in our work session prior. So what I'll do is allow Barry to come forward and us continue our conversation from our work session. So Sonia and Eugene, I believe y'all had some questions.
Well, I had based my opinion that I thought the money that we get, this being a federal grant with us matching a small amount, I thought that was to take down dilapidated houses in neighborhoods where people could not afford to take them down. And when I saw 900 Alberta on here, this is a nice neighborhood. This house is caught on fire. The homeowner had insurance, so why should we send taxpayers' money to take the house down for them? So I would not vote to spend the money there.
So that would be deductive alternate number 1 then, right? If we wanted to remove that one.
If you wanted to do the other 2 and not Alberta, you would award the contract with deductive alternate number 1.
Would the city still have to put in any extra money?
Yes, sir. If we do that, we would have to add $5,500 on top of what commitment we've already made on the grant.
Mr. Mott,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm partial to wanting, especially the Plaza Drive and the Sims. I'll go on record as saying that. In the past, I do not recall us questioning why or how it came to be that a property was on the list. Now, also granted, Councilman Gooseby and I have a lot of these properties in our districts that we're concerned about and are excited about when these homeowners take part in a demolition grant. However, I think that we are training on picking, certain houses based off what we personally know or something like that. What I recalled is that we've asked people to sign up, property owners, for whatever reason that they want the property to be removed, and that's what's going on in the past. Now, of course, we can say we don't want something because it's going to be a cost to us or not that we don't want to incur, but I think that we were looking at homes that were, like Mr. Gooseby said, dilapidated homes, eyesores, with the understanding these property owners are going to maintain we don't even know who the property owners are. We don't even inquire. I mean, I haven't. I mean, some I do, some I don't, but I haven't made a decision based off that. And I don't disagree totally with what he's saying, but I'm just wanting you to clear up the process, what we do when we're contacted, or even if we reach out with a letter and say, hey, your stuff is looking a mess. What's our process to get a house or any type of property on that list that has happened in the past where that property has been demolished?
Yes, ma'am. So this grant's a 2021 grant through ADECA, and I'll just remind you of what the grant was set aside. We submitted a grant application saying the city was being progressive about getting and removing blight and nuisance properties across the entire city. And the grant was written to several things. One, it was to open it up for anybody that wanted to apply for their dwelling to come in to the program to submit an application to do that. And it's a letter and it's a certification they have to do saying that they own the property. They give us the rights to come in there. They have to remove all electrical and gas connections. The city has to declare that it is a nuisance per our requirements that are there. There is no requirement as far as income to the person, the location of the property. There's no requirements for that as far as the economic situation for the property owner or what happened to the house. Does the city consider it a nuisance? Yes or no? Does the property owner want their property to be included into the grant? We accept those applications and we submit those to the state. The state goes through and looks at those and approves or disapproves those applications to be included on the grant. We just accepted the grant, which was right under $300,000, and we will work till we get that money gone. So the way we have handled this is, as people have come into the office and say, I want to have my property included, if it met the requirements, we had them fill out the letter, we accrue those, and then we submit those into the state for approval. If they meet the approval, they go on the bid list and they're bid in the order in which we received and are approved by the state. Now, in this particular situation, we knew that we had $16,490 left, and we knew that we wanted to maximize the dollars in the grant, so we tried to come up with a base bid, deductive alternate 1, deductive alternate 2, hoping to figure out, after we got real numbers in, what combination would we like to do. So our choices are, in this situation, we've submitted these projects in, the state has approved them. The engineering office doesn't go through and say this one's included, not included, or what the situation is. We take them as we get them. Do they meet the criteria? The state's approved them. Then we put them on a bid list. Now we're down to the very end of this grant. So our options are we can reject all the bids that we've got there and turn the money back in. I would hate to see us do that. If we want to seek another grant for this, I'd like to see us maximize the grant funds that were given to us. So the order that we can award them, we have to award them in order. One is we do Plaza alone. Second, we do Plaza and Sims, which is Sims is the mobile home, or we can do Plaza, Sims, and Alberta. And the financial consequences of those three alternatives, if we do just Plaza, we have to add $2,440 on top of the commitments we've already made. If we do Plaza and Sims, we'll have to add $5,500. And then if we do all three properties, it's $21,275. So the Alberta property that we're discussing, it's roughly, it will cost us another $16,000 out of our pocket to do that Alberta property over and beyond the grant money that we have already committed. So as a recommendation, I was asked to give you a recommendation. My recommendation was to maximize the grant and at least do the Plaza property, maximize the grant. But if you'd like to do deductive alternate 1, if that is your wish, then you could do Plaza and Sims. Did I answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
So once we exhaust these funds, assuming we go forward with at least Plaza, when can are we eligible for future funds?
Yes, sir. So I did get an update from them. We have to have this project closed out and completed by March 31st. So pending y'all put forward a award of some contract, we will have that completed by the deadline. The next round of applications is due late June, July, with an award sometime October, November, based on previous schedules. So we would reapply again if it is your desire to go after another round of demolition projects. And we have gotten a list already started of other properties that want to be added to this project, if that is your desire to do so. They've told us that we can go up to $500,000 on it. I'll remind you that we did 250, and this one's just under 300. The 300 one we're coming down to the final days of getting that grant done, so that 250, 300 seems to be a good number that we've been able to accomplish in the past. But we can reapply this year, and if it's successful, we'll be re-awarded sometime October, November of this year for another round.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions for Barry? All right. Someone's going to need to make a motion. Looks like we've got three options here. We can move to award the bid for the CDBG demolition project, Phase 7 to Hopper Moore Incorporated DBA BMI in the amount of $37,765, or $21,990, or $18,930. Did I get that right, Barry?
That's correct.
And further additional funding of $2,440, $5,500, or $21,275.
Correct.
Okay. So, does everybody understand what our three options are?
I think so.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve to do the Plaza Drive only.
Second,
All right, so to be clear,
in the amount of $18,000.
if I could get you to restate your motion, then, Eugene, to move to award the bid for the CDBG demolition project Phase 7 to Hoppermore Incorporated DBA BMI in the amount of
$18,930.
$18,930, and further authorize additional funding of $2,440, right?
Yes.
All right, would you mind clearly stating your motion, just so we've got that in the record?
All right, I make a motion that we approve to Hoppermore Incorporated to take the bid for $18,930 for 3841 Plaza Drive, plus the city will have to inject $2,440.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll now review and consider a bid recommendation for the police department vehicles. I introduce and call for consideration of a recommendation from Police Chief Michael Moore to award bid requisition number 2024-01 for 3 Dodge Durango Pursuit Package all-wheel drive vehicles to Mitchell Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in the total amount of $130,470, which is $43,490 each. Other bids received are as follows: from Stivers Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram for $43,459.36 each, for a total bid of $130,378.08, which you'll notice that is actually about $22 less, but they did not meet bid specifications regarding the bid form submittal. Also, we could have used our local preference ordinance in order to make up for that $22. But so do I hear a motion?
Move to award bid requisition number 2024-01 to Mitchell Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in the total bid amount of $130,470.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now move on to new business. I introduce Planning Commission recommendations. For the record, a letter from the Enterprise Planning Commission to approve the following requests. Request by Chapel Hill Land Development, LLC, on behalf of Brenda Bird and Scott Curington for the annexation and zoning of 5.4 acres of land to R100 Residential District located at the southeast corner of Ozark Highway and Sheffield Road, County Road 700. A request by Chapel Hill Land Development, LLC, on behalf of Brenda Bird and Scott Curington for the rezone of 86.35 acres of land from AG2 Agricultural District to R100 Residential District located at the southeast corner of Ozark Highway and Sheffield Road, County Road 700. A request by Billy Cotter Construction Incorporated on behalf of Ashton Parish for the rezone of 10 acres of land from R75S Residential District and B1 Business District to TH1 Townhouse District located on Doster Street. I introduced ordinance 020624, which is the annexation and zoning of the Bird and Curington property, which we just introduced the recommendations of. So I introduced ordinance 020624, providing for the annexation and zoning of 5.4 acres of land owned by Brenda Bird and Scott Curington into the city limits and to establish zoning of R100 Residential District. Also call for a public hearing to be held at the regular meeting scheduled for March 5th, 2024. I also introduced ordinance 020624A, which is also the Bird Curington rezone. I introduced ordinance 020624A, providing for the rezone of 86.35 acres of land owned by Brenda Bird and Scott Currington from AG2 Agricultural District to R100 Residential District located at the southeast corner of Ozark Highway and Shellfield Road, County Road 700. I call for a public hearing to be held at the regular meeting scheduled for March 5th, 2024. I introduce ordinance 020624B, which is the parish rezone. Introduce ordinance 020624B, providing for the rezone of 10 acres of land owned by Ashton Parish from R75S Residential District and B1 Business District to TH1 Townhouse District located on Doster Street. I call for a public hearing to be held at the regular meeting scheduled for March 5th, 2024. Review and consideration of Resolution 020624 to set the public hearing and vacating portion of unnamed road. I introduce and call for consideration of an application and Resolution 020624 related to the partial vacation of an unnamed road. The resolution sets a public hearing as to the partial vacation for April 2nd, 2024 at the regularly scheduled council meeting. Do I hear a motion?
I move to adopt Resolution 020624.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 020624. Is there any further discussion? Jonathan, all we're doing with this resolution, for clarity, is calling for a public hearing, right? We're not vacating the actual road this evening.
Correct.
So there's going to be okay. All right.
This would be no different than a lot of the other, public notices
Yeah.
to vote on. But
All right, any other questions? We have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 020624. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. If you could stay up here, Jonathan, we didn't discuss these in work session. So now we're going to consider accepting grant funds to authorize the mayor to execute an agreement for the Department of Homeland Security and the Police Department. I call for a motion to accept grant funds in the amount of $44,800 from the Department of Homeland Security and further authorize the mayor to sign any and all documents related to the grant agreement. The funding will be utilized to purchase search and rescue equipment such as communication headsets, radios, thermal imaging, and night vision equipment and searchlights. No city match is required. Chief, you got some comments on this?
Yes, sir. Just some quick comments. It's always a good thing to get money from the state. I'm waiting for the mayor to be able to authorize us to get it. Again, there's no match to it. Most of it, all the money's going to go to our search and rescue team, buying equipment for, unfortunately, when the elderly, which we have quite a few of the elderly, the young children and everything else. I think we need to have a team together that are trained to include with the CERT and local fire and rescue to be able to utilize this equipment if the need comes down to it.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Do I hear a motion?
I move to accept, $44,800 in Department of Homeland Security grant funds.
Second. Sorry.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
okay.
finish your
And
motion.
authorize the mayor to sign any and all documents related to the grant agreement.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to accept these grant funds and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider authorizing the mayor to execute intergovernmental support agreement regarding grounds maintenance at Shell Army Airfield. I call for a motion to authorize the mayor to execute an intergovernmental support agreement, IGSA, between the United States and the City of Enterprise for grounds maintenance services to be provided by the city at Shell Army Airfield per the terms of the agreement. Jonathan, you want to update us?
So I know we have discussed this in the past. This is something that the Army, that DOD is very keen on doing, particularly in areas that communities, state agencies, or otherwise can help offset cost or at least be a win-win situation for the military or DOD entity and the surrounding community. So in this case, the win presumably for the city, and for Fort Novosel, is they have somebody and had a problem continuing to get contracts on an annual basis to maintain a lot of their common areas. So last summer, maybe a year and a half ago, the mayor and I went out to Fort Novosel to have a meeting. I don't know if you went on during that time, but a lot of time you saw grass that was 2 feet high. At the time, they were having trouble maintaining their common areas on the installation and in the cantonment areas and at the stage fields. So, initially they looked at, is there a way that, the city of Enterprise, city of Dothan, a lot of municipalities and counties cut grass. Is there a way we can work out a partnership? Well, Fort Novosel is large, and so we said, hey, we don't have the capacity, the staffing to really, take on the whole thing, but maybe we could try to help out, somewhere where our crews are already running in and around Shell Army Airfield. And so additionally, Billy Powell and I spoke about, we're growing our parks and rec facilities. We've worked out an agreement with Enterprise State Community College and building soccer fields. We're going to have more things to maintain in the city, which meant that we were going to have to hire more people. We're also going to have to maintain some rights of way along the Veterans Home and things like that. So we were going to have to buy some equipment, but maybe that equipment wouldn't be used 100% of the time for what we intended. And so we looked at it. We put together a proposal that we thought we could meet the needs of the installation and also not degrade our services. It'll actually compound. And I think this agreement benefits both entities. At any point, if it doesn't, we'll have the ability to, get out of that agreement. There's no financial obligation for the city. A lot of the employees and the equipment were going to be purchased by the city anyway. This just allows additional funding through this partnership from the installation to the city that will offset some of our costs, particularly on equipment.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Do I hear a motion?
Move to authorize the mayor to execute the intergovernmental support agreement as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions of Jonathan on this? I know we've all pretty well aware of what's going on here. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider authorizing the fire chief to execute a contract regarding Safe Haven baby boxes. I call for a motion to authorize the fire chief to execute a contract with Safe Haven baby boxes upon review and approval by the city attorney. The city will be provided a grant of up to $18,000 from Kids to Love for the purchase and installation of a Safe Haven baby box at Central Fire Station, 301 Plaza Drive. In June of 2023, Safe Haven laws in the state of Alabama were changed from mothers being allowed to drop off infants less than 72 hours old at hospitals to newborns up to 45 days old at either hospitals or fire stations. We did discuss this earlier, so I'll entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the fire chief to execute a contract with Safe Haven baby boxes upon review and approved by our city attorney.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider a request for permission to purchase equipment from Parks and Recreation. I introduce and call for consideration of request from Billy Powell, Director of Community Services and Recreation, to purchase the following budgeted equipment from Deere and Company, doing business as SunSouth LLC through the Alabama Tractors contract at a total cost of $304,470.64. That's one 2023 John Deere FC 15M Flex Wing Rotary Cutter at $23,601.60. One 2024 John Deere FC 20R Flex Wing Rotary Cutter for $37,707.84. One 2023 John Deere 6110M Cab Tractor for $117,622.08. One 2023 John Deere 6120M cab tractor for $124,000, $539.12. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the purchase request as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider a request for permission to purchase equipment from Public Works. I introduce and call for consideration of a request from City Engineer, Public Works Director Barry Mott to purchase the following equipment included in the FY 2024 budget. One John Deere 15-foot batwing bush hog mower from SunSouth LLC through Alabama Tractors contract for $25,000, and one Trailer World trailer for portable scissor lift at $6,500 from Trailer World. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve the purchase request as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the purchase request as submitted. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider request permission to seek bids from Engineering and Public Works for their vehicles. I introduce and call for consideration of request from City Engineer, Public Works Director Barry Mott to seek bids for the following. Engineering, 5 Ford Maverick trucks or approved equivalent. Disposal, 2 half-ton pickup, 2x4 pickup trucks. Sanitation, 1 3/4 ton 2x4 pickup truck. 2 1/2 ton 2x4 pickup trucks. 1 1/2 ton 4x4 pickup truck. Sewer, 1 1/2 ton 4x4 pickup truck. 1 1-ton 4x4 pickup truck with a utility bed. And street, 1 3/4 ton 4x4 pickup truck and 1 dump truck. Do I hear a motion to approve the request to seek bids as submitted?
Move to approve the request to seek bids as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the request to seek bids as submitted. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now review and consider streetlight modification on Archer Trail. I introduce and call for consideration of request from Assistant Director of Engineering Thomas Hardy to install the following streetlights at an annual cost of $906. That's 2 40-watt LED fixtures and poles on Archer Trail. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve the street lighting modification as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the streetlight modification as submitted. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now introduce an ABC license request for Las Galeras Mexican Restaurant. I introduce a request from Las Galeras Mexican Restaurant, LLC, DBA Las Galeras Mexican Restaurant, for a restaurant retail liquor license located at 2952 Rucker Boulevard, and call for a public hearing to be held at the regular meeting scheduled for February 20th, 2024. Mayor, do you have a report for us?
Yes, I would like to start off with a moment of silence for local journalist Mike Gerspan, who lost his battle with brain cancer last week. Mike had a passion for covering local news and telling the stories of our community. This is truly a loss for us all. Let's take a moment now to remember Mike Gerspan. I want to thank all the citizens that came out tonight for our city council meeting. It is wonderful to see seats of our civic center filled with those who care so deeply for the future of Enterprise. Let me assure you that the council and I will continue to do our due diligence and make decisions we feel are in the best interest of our residents and our city progress. I would like to again congratulate the members of the boys and girls wrestling team, the coaches and the families. Your hard work and dedication have proved successful, and we are proud to have so many champions in our midst. I would like to again congratulate Ashley Marshall on her appointment as city attorney. Ashley, we are looking forward to working with you and have you represent the city of Enterprise. Congratulations also to O'Neill Boswell and Rachel Snipes, who were crowned king and queen of the Mardi Gras on Main. The fundraiser raised more than $18,000 for the downtown beautification efforts. The Mardi Gras spirit filled Main Street and have heard great feedback on the inaugural event. Enterprise business license renewals are due for February 15. Don't forget that. We encourage our business owners to renew by mail due to the ongoing construction project at City Hall. Also, a reminder that all of the City of Enterprise offices will be closed on Monday, February 19th for President's Day. The garbage collection schedule will be adjusted, and you can find that information on our website and Facebook page. Both of those are great resources to stay connected to what is happening in our city. I encourage you all to check them out. Thank you.
Ms. Rich?
Thank you for your patience and attendance tonight for our long meeting, and certainly appreciate all our residents that came out and to address us tonight. And welcome on board, Ms. Huffman. We're mighty glad to have you as our new HR director. And Ms. Marshall, we welcome you unofficially, but official welcome. And congrats to our wrestling teams, and just thank everybody for coming. Thank you, staff, for all your continued hard work.
Mr. Goolsbee?
Ditto what Sonia had to say, and I know that you all have seen in the last few days they're beginning to repair our streets where the water lines have been replaced. I'm certainly glad to see that, and I'll be glad to see this project come to a close. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks, they'll be complete. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight.
Mr. Paget?
Thank everyone for coming. It's while it takes time, I think it's always very important for our citizens to be involved in our government process. I would like to remind everyone that all agendas and packets are posted on our city website in advance of our meetings so that you have access to those ahead of time and know what's going on and what's going to be at the city council meeting. So I believe those are posted on the Friday before the meeting, so you have access to those at the same time that we have access to them.
I'd like to say thank you to everyone that came tonight. And I just got 2 texts, and I'm going to say it, but for all those that are online, I had 2 people just text me. We were here the whole time, so thank you for watching online in case you can't come here. But again, thank you to all the residents who came out. I wish more people would do that, not only at this meeting, but at work session and at our boards and our commission, planning commission. You're more than welcome to come out to those too, to see what goes on. Again, thank you to our wrestling teams. It's awesome. 2 of the young ladies I've known since they were real little, so it's nice to see what's happening out there for both the boys and the girls team. And thank you, Miss Ashley. Thank Derek. Welcome aboard, and looking forward to working with you. Let us know what we can do to help you out. That's it.
Yeah, ditto what everybody said. Welcome aboard, Ashley and Ms. Huffman, and look forward to working with both of you. Thank you for the citizens that came out tonight. I know, probably not happy with the way we voted on it, but I sincerely meant, I'd like to continue the conversation. Certainly, y'all feel free to reach out to me. Be happy to sit down with you and continue our due diligence on any potential projects that are going on that property. But we will stand adjourned. Thank you. Oh, yeah, if 3 hours and 15 minutes wasn't enough, feel free to hang around for our E911 board meeting. We do have a E911 board meeting.
You want us to start an argument?
No, we just want to get this.
Do we have an agenda for that?
Yeah, it's in your you've got a long folder.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, does anybody need a break, or are we good to roll into this? We're good? All right. Thank you. I don't think this will take long. So I'm going to call this E911 board meeting to order. Let the record show that all board members are present.